Just do a quick sound check again. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Committee of the Whole for Tuesday, November 12th. I am Councillor Lauren Greenlaw, acting as mayor today, chairing this meeting. I'd like to say welcome to the Squamish National Traditional Territory. I'd like to start this meeting off in a good way by giving thanks to the earth that supports and sustains, the air that breathes life, the fire that warms and renews, and the waters, the oceans and rivers that are currently bringing the salmon back for spawning. It's always so amazing to be a witness to this salmon life cycle. It's such an integral part of the land and culture in this beautiful place that we call home. So I just want to say thanks for all that. So please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting, which is Ms. Von Bladeau. Okay. Can I have, I'd just like to say Mayor Herford and Councillors Pettengill and I believe Stoner will be joining at some point remotely. Can I have someone move the adoption of the agenda by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Councillor French? And we'll move on to our first item, which is the report on, let's vote on that. All in favor. And then we'll move on to our first topic today, which is the report on Youth Climate Corps presented by Ian Picketts. And if you can introduce yourself as well. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Picketts, and I'm the Manager of Sustainability and Climate Change here at the District of Squamish. I'm joined today by Aida Goma Petit, who's the coordinator of the Youth Climate Corps. My pronouns are he, his, and I can be addressed accordingly. We are here today to give you a program update of the progress of the Youth Climate Corps BC in Squamish. As many of you are already aware, Youth Climate Corps BC is a program that was born in British Columbia, based out of Nelson, and it's an organization that aims to empower youth to take action to address the climate crisis. The Youth Climate Corps program builds capacity and develops motivated, organized groups of people who engage in climate action work that benefits communities, and it also provides benefits for the people who engage in the work. So we heard about this program about exactly a year ago, and we're quite inspired about the program, its vision, and its potential benefits for our community. So we endeavored to bring them to Squamish. So the first thing we did is we created a partnering agreement. We also had to engage with the union to ensure that there was no conflict with other tasks that should be performed by union members. There was no problem there. We then went and identified key projects or opportunities that YCC could be engaged in to benefit our community. And we also had to establish a budget to make the program a reality. One thing I will say through this whole process is that there was an incredible sense of excitement about the program, and everyone was very motivated to help us to work toward making this happen, both internally and externally. Just to give you a breakdown of the budget, we were able to secure $60,000 in external grant funding for a couple of projects that the group could undertake. We were also able to allocate $55,000 of internal budgeted money toward the program. So just as one example, for our climate action plan update, we had $15,000 budgeted to outreach associated with the plan. We used that money toward Youth Climate Corps and had them lead the outreach of the plan update. So that brings us to $115,000. The remaining $111,000 was secured by the Youth Climate Corps group themselves. They are quite adept at receiving funding and were able to get employment costs covered through provincial and federal grants. Youth Climate Corps has contributed to a large number of projects at the District of Squamish for the last five months, and we are very excited to tell you about a few of them. At this point, I will hand it over to my colleague, Ms. Goma Petit, who is the coordinator of Youth Climate Corps, who will tell you about them more.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aida Goma Petit. I'm the project coordinator at YCCBC. If you're looking at this slide, it just gives you a brief list of the projects we've undertook with the district this season. And I'm just going to give you a basic rundown of each of these and what we did. So first and foremost, we participated in a few of the zero waste events that the district already puts on throughout the season. The Reuse It Fair, the adult clothing and book swap, and the kids clothing and book swap, essentially just helping Laura and the rest of the team run these projects and make sure they run smoothly. We've done a couple things through active transportation and getting the community excited about sustainable transportation as a whole. That's looked like farmers market tabling and engaging with the community just to get them to understand about EV and what that looks like. And then a lot of this has done, we've done a lot through Go By Bike Week. In the spring, we started off our season with facilitating Go By Bike Week with Laura. And then in the fall, taking this on for her while she was away and doing a movie night, a couple bike tune-up stations, and just again, some more farmers market tabling and bingo distribution. One of our main projects this season is the Circular Economy Asset Map. The asset map is essentially a destination for folks in Squamish to utilize, and it lists all businesses and just circular practices within the community. It's like a centralized point, so if you want to participate in a circular economy, you have access to it. This is actually going to be released hopefully this week at the Trailblazer event this Thursday, and it's just a resource for the community to utilize. Another project that we undertook was the municipal building waste audits. This is the first of its kind. Essentially, what is a waste audit? It is looking through the garbage of each of our buildings as municipal government to see what's getting recycled, what's getting thrown away, and how we could be doing better with those resources. We did this for Municipal Hall, Fire Hall 1 and 2, the library, the Adventure Center, and I believe Public Works as well. It was very stinky, but very fun. And then one of our main projects, the project that got the most funding for this season, was our retrofit assist programming. This was for air sealing homes and making homes slightly more energy efficient with some low-hanging tasks. Those low-hanging tasks looks like caulking windows, replacing weather stripping on doors, and then adding just some insulation in different holes within a building. Our most successful house was this 35-year-old home based in Squamish, and we got an air change of about 1.6, which essentially improves a home by 21%. It doesn't sound like much, but most of our homes, we got a range of 0.3 to 0.8 in air change per home. And we went to 24 homes total throughout the season in Squamish and in Whistler. And then one of our last / biggest things that we got funding for was youth engagement, specifically around what sustainability in Squamish looks like and just environmental education as a whole. This has looked like going into summer camps, just doing basic educational lessons on environmental science, and then just asking basic questions. And this fall has been focusing more around what the future Squamish, what kids want to see for the future Squamish. That has looked a lot like improving transportation, having access from Totem Hall to other spots within the community, and just general feelings about climate change and the Community Climate Action Plan update with youth. And then last but not least, our Climate Action Plan update engagement. This is an ever-changing thing because it looks differently with each event we go to. But one of our main things that we're doing this week / to kind of finalize our projects with the district is this engagement poster that you see on the right side. This is just explaining what climate action can look like in Squamish and providing an opportunity for the community to understand a little bit more about carbon emissions in Squamish. This poster is printed out currently and is hosted at Brennan Park with 2 chalkboard slides, or not slides, poster boards that you can kind of see in this left photo, asking different questions to the community about what they want to see, what carbon emission is. We are consistently going to be going in to Brennan Park and like receiving that feedback to understand and provide that back to the district on what the community wants to see. And it also gives the community an opportunity to provide anonymous feedback in a fun and interactive way.
Great, thank you so much. So just a few lessons and reflections as the program is nearing its conclusion. The one very positive benefit we've seen of this program is that it has enabled a much more fulsome connection with the community, especially with younger members of our community that are often harder to reach through our traditional channels. Another huge positive of the program is that it's a significant asset to have extra capacity available for events and initiatives. For example, the zero waste events, having a team of ready, willing, and able 5 people who are organized and there to help. It just provides a lot of assurance that these events are going to go well. Often, otherwise, we're relying on volunteers who may or may not come, and one can find themselves underwater rather quickly. Another positive benefit is the group has assisted a number of different departments within the District of Squamish, including economic development, public works, even engineering a little bit. So this has been an asset to our whole internal district staff and also other local NGOs, including Squamish Can and the Howe Sound Biosphere region. Many other co-benefits associated with the program as well. For example, one of the individuals became extremely interested in air sealing, and who knows, maybe in a couple of years, this individual will be a contractor who is available to do this service more broadly in our community. On that note, we would like to acknowledge, unfortunately, the group isn't here to join us today. Unfortunately, there has been a number of minor calamities that have occurred that each of the other groups individually were not able to come. They're all very legitimate reasons. None of them, we can chuckle about them because none of them are that bad, but it's too bad that they're not here. They would have loved to be here, and they send their regrets. And Ms. Goma, Petit, represents them well anyways. Finally, we are actively considering a 2025 program and looking into internal funding, external opportunities, and continuing the partnership with Youth Climate Corps. So with that, we would like to welcome your questions and feedback. And just once again, I guess take a second now to personally express my gratitude to Youth Climate Corps for putting energy and passion into our community over the last 6 months. So thank you very much, and welcome your feedback. I think it would make sense for me to stop sharing because of the members remotely. Does that make sense?
Thanks so much for that presentation, Ms. Goma, Petit, and Dr. Picketts. I hope all the calamities were minimal and have been addressed. Thank you for all your hard work. Just sharing information and education about climate change is incredibly important. So I really appreciate all the hard work you're doing. And I'll open it up for questions. Councillor French.
Thanks, Chair. My question spins off of the last slide. I wonder if you have thoughts, and you might like to share them with us, based on the experience this year when the district does this again. I'm purposefully not saying if the district does this again, because I think it's a valuable program that I'd love to see return. What could we do better to make the program more effective?
That is an excellent question. I have a couple of thoughts, and I'm sure you do as well. One thing that the Youth Climate Corps really stressed with us, and I totally respect their rationale for this, is they wanted all of the members to experience all of the activities that we're having them do. And I think that's important. But when we do this next year, I think we should be a little more unapologetic about allowing members to focus on certain projects. I think some of the projects would have gone just as quickly or maybe even quicker with 2 people involved in them, not all 5. So I think if we could divide and conquer a little bit more, we can be more efficient and get a little bit more done. Another thing, and it's on our end internally, is having the group start a little bit earlier in time for the Spring Go by Bike Week would have been helpful, just the logistics and the partnering agreement, etc. The group came in a little too close to the summer, and then people were out and about a little more, so it was a little harder to organize. So having the group start in like early June, I think would have been quite beneficial. Ms. Coleman, please.
Yeah, I would agree with Ian. I think the length of term is the biggest piece. Is the longer you can have this project ongoing, the better impact you can have and keep projects running smoothly and more sustainably, especially with like school programming and things like that. If we're going to do more with youth engagement, I think the longer the term, the better.
Great. That was my only question. So I'll just finish by thanking you and the rest of the group for taking on quote unquote stinky but fun work. It's valuable lessons were learned out of and valuable data was collected out of the work that the group did. And on behalf of the community, thanks for all of that work.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm curious as to what venue you may have used for the movie nights. I recall Squamish Can had its beginnings with movie nights, and that's how we built up that organization 12 years ago or so at the Adventure Center. What was the marketing and venue that you used for the movie nights?
Through the chair, yeah, I would say we worked closely with Laura and Shannon to acquire the Adventure Center. And then the district did all of the marketing through Facebook and Eventbrite to reach into the community, which leads me to some feedback I forgot to add was just, I think social media could be another point of contact to change, especially for more events if we're going forward.
Thank you. The project reminds me of the relationship that Squamish Can built up over a few years with Quest University students, and two projects come to mind where making a video about the project for dissemination was incorporated as part of it. One was a solar hot water installation in Valleycliff, and the other was a light bulb change out. And so the part of the project was to have a team of videographers. I wondered whether you have incorporated that this round or whether it might be considered for next time, say for 2025, and using YouTube or the district video channel to just disseminate the project outcomes and recommendations.
To the chair, that's a great point. We Youth Climate Corps did create a video showcasing the work that's happening here, which we're excited about. It's a good point. We could do more to share that more actively through our own channels. Yeah, I'll hand it over to Ms. Goma Petit, who might have more to offer.
Yeah, I would agree with Ian. We do have a video coming out about general programming for Squamish. I don't think it fully deeply dives with every nonprofit organization we worked with and every single project we did with the district. I do think there is room for improvement.
That's a good point.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much for all the work. It's important work to get out there, and I think the Youth Climate Corps just seems like an ideal space, an ideal idea, an idea of formation to get youth activated and finding where they can make change in our community. A question about the next touch point. When do we see either an application for grant funding, or when do we see the next touch point to initiate? When does council see the next touch point to potentially initiate next year's edition?
Through the chair, I please, a supervisor can please jump in and correct me if I'm out of line here. There's people in the room who know far more about this than I do. My understanding is I don't believe there needs to be a council motion if we're able to secure the funding through available sources. We may well need council approval to apply for grants. But I believe that there does not have to be a formal request in a grant to go forward with this. Thank you.
Do we have funding in the 2025-2029 budget to potentially, because if there's a grant funding application, we'll presumably need the matching funding. And does that funding exist in the current budget?
Through the chair, the room to utilize funding, should we get it, exists. And then there is also room in available budgets that we can allocate toward this. A really good example is that in our operational budget, we have $75,000 per year for climate action programming. So this year we use $20,000 from that, like from general taxation for that. There's also an opportunity to draw on the carbon neutral reserve funds that are allocated to the retrofit assist program. So there's some room in that project. Also, waste management budgets so there is the room. We'll have to make it work, and then we also will have to get assurance from Youth Climate Corps that they can come up with commensurate funding. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, well, I'd just like to acknowledge I did just see Mayor Herford with a hand up. I'm not sure if he's still there, but Mayor Herford and Councillor Pettengill have joined us.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
All right. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I haven't figured out, or I'm not allowed to turn my camera on, one of the two. But my question is first of all, thank you for the presentation and all the work. I think this is really remarkable. My question is, with the gap, like basically running through, say mainly around summer time, there's going to be likely a turnover, so we're unlikely to see the entirety of the team back, or maybe a whole new team. And how do you see sort of that onboarding process, and how do we ensure that we're getting we're not learning the same lessons, or the group isn't learning the same lessons every year. We're sort of accumulating that knowledge and bringing that forward to the next year's initiatives to be even more efficient and effective. Yeah, that sort of the nature of this seems to me like that's a key piece, because will be new folks joining all the time. So how has that been sort of thought of, or how are you looking at that going forward?
To the chair, it's a great question. You're absolutely right. Continuity is very important for a program like this, and we can be much more effective next year if a number of the same people come back. Without getting too far ahead of myself, I can say that Youth Climate Corps has from their organization expressed a strong interest in continuing the relationship. And if we do commit to a continued relationship, they are looking at bridging some other work that they have to individuals to enable them to have a shorter or even not a space in their employment. So it is something we are actively thinking about it, but couldn't agree more. Having great people back is very important for the continued success of this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it's great to hear that they're thinking about that as well. And I wondered also, and thank you to my colleagues. I had the same questions essentially as Councillor French, and along the same lines as Councillor Hamilton before me. But I know that it sounds like you're not seeking a motion from council, but or it's not required. But just I'd be looking for ways where council can, I guess, express their support for this initiative, and not have it something that, and no disrespect for staff for finding a way to, quite the opposite actually, for finding a way to implement this through available budgets, but to be able to express their support for this initiative, and as a way of celebrating the successes we've had together, and whether that's through a specific budget ask, or just supporting the sort of that those discretionary decisions that staff have made to get us to this point. So I would be looking for a way to support this, that we can sort of stand behind as well, because I do think it's a really important initiative, and also excellent value for money. So I just want to throw that concept out there. Anyways, thank you.
Thanks. Any other questions? Okay, I have a couple of my own. For people who are tuning in, where can the public find information about upcoming events, and also some of the programs that you currently have undergoing? Like, is the retrofit program then like finished now, or can people still apply for it in the future?
The air sealing pilot project, which Youth Climate Corps delivered the work on, is finished, but the retrofit assist project is still ongoing. And that would be something we would look to hopefully to running a similar pilot project next year. So the Let's Talk Squamish has information about the climate action plan update. Yeah, I think. And is there any with our events? So the individual events are advertised through Facebook, through our website, and other mechanisms. And is there anything I'm forgetting that?
The Youth Climate Corps, our social media and marketing team advertises things as well as it comes along. And especially with this last engagement event, they will be getting photos and videos of these posters around the CCAP engagement and advertising that onto their platform as well.
Okay, so follow Youth Climate Corps basically is a good first step. Okay, thanks. Another piece, there's this great book called Earth for All. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's basically like a guidebook of how we transcend the situation. And they talk about how climate change is actually a symptom of much deeper systemic issues, and including gender and racial inequity and wealth inequity. And it manifests in a myriad of ways, as you know, like compromising food security. And I was just wondering if Youth Climate Corps has given any consideration to kind of education around those pieces, those foundational pieces. Thanks.
Through the chair. Yes, I think we hit the ground running with that first and foremost before attending to anything else. We wanted to make sure that starting this project, we had an initial contact training, appreciation engagement with Squamish Nation, first and foremost, and then reaching out to local nonprofits and initiatives within town to make sure that we weren't starting anything fresh, just contributing to current initiative outside of our district related projects. I think Youth Climate Corps as a whole is very in tune with that, is always looking to grow with it as well, but tries our best not to be a white settler in this community.
Yeah, also the gender piece is huge, and I find a lot of people focus on the racial piece because that's often the conversation, and the gender piece I feel like gets overlooked a lot. But yeah, well, thanks so much for coming to this presentation and for giving us all the information about all the great stuff you've been up to. Happy to support basically all your initiatives moving forward personally. And with that, I'll be looking for a motion to receive, moved by Councillor French. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, so a motion to receive, and in doing so, council acknowledges the program delivered good value for money. And if there's a seconder, I'll talk briefly to it.
I'll second that.
Okay, yeah, so I just thought that adding that additional thought makes it clear that council supports what happened, and we support the program happening again in the future.
All right, thanks. All in favor? So that's unanimous. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate all your work. And up next, I think we're going to talk about the Circular Economy Challenge briefly, and then move on, I think. So. That's not fair. You can't put pictures of Seamus on there. That's not fair. Introduce as well Ms. White and Ms. Wittenseller will be presenting.
Great, thank you. Hello, my name is Shannon White. I'm the Integrated Solid Waste Specialist at the District of Squamish, and I'm joined today here with Laura Wittenzellner, who is our Sustainability Outreach Coordinator. And we are also, I should just add, supported in the audience with Ian Picketts, who is the Manager of Climate Change and Sustainability, and Colin McCarthy, who is the Manager of Building Services at the District of Squamish. So without further ado, I'd just like to pass it off to Ms. Wittenzellner to talk about the Circular Economy Challenge.
Yeah, Mayor and Council, my name is Laura Witten-Zellner. I'm the Outreach Sustainability Coordinator on the District Sustainability Team. Pronouns are she, her. And before we dive in today, I wanted to circle back to this year's Circular Economy Challenge for Council. So to remind everyone, for several years now, October has been the Circular Economy Month in the District of Squamish. We've officially proclaimed it as that for a few years running now. And during that month, we do our best to offer events and workshops that not only foster circular principles, but also increase awareness and education in the community. And in 2024, we offered a canning workshop, water canning workshop, a repair cafe, an adult clothing and book swap. And most recently, we hosted a kids clothing, book and toy swap. And all in all, about 1,065 people attended and took advantage of learning new skills and keeping items in circulation. And in line with all of that, Council was challenged to submit their own circular economy projects. And I'd like to thank everyone who participated for their submissions. They were great. We saw many circular economy principles in action, like reuse, repair, recycling, and refuse. And the winner of this year's challenge is Councillor Jenna Stoner. With her particularly data-based submission, I will say. And we thought that it is extremely relevant for our growing and young community, what she submitted. She focused on avoiding household hygiene waste by using reusable cloth diapers instead of disposable diapers for the youngest member of her family. And by doing so, about 112 diapers were avoided for the month of October, representing almost 21 kilograms of waste, which is amazing. In addition to that, Councillor Stoner is considerate of the energy use that goes into washing and cleaning those cloth diapers and makes an effort to wash in cold water and hang to dry. So while all submissions were fantastic and we appreciated them entirely, we think this one is a great inspiration for Squamish parents of young kids, whom we have so many of here who have not yet considered using reusable diapers. There's a few photos of the submissions on the slide, and we do have a small token of appreciation for Councillor Stoner, and maybe I can give it to someone else in her place after.
I can take it.
And so this is a reusable Squamish bag, which are on sale at Brennan Park Recreation Center for anyone who is interested. All right.
I'll just do a little interlude there. Thank you so much. I just want to say congratulations to Councillor Stoner for winning this year's challenge. And I also wanted to commend staff on the events you put on. 1,065 people. That's a great turnout. So good work. And we'll continue on to our next item in the agenda, which is the solid waste and business license bylaw related amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps not as fun as Circular Economy Challenge. We would like to present to Council on some bylaw amendments related to solid waste as well as the business license bylaw. We present the updates and amendments to Council for review and provide opportunity for feedback regarding the proposed changes. And the other purpose of this report is to repeal and replace the District of Squamish's single-use items reduction bylaw number 3128 so that it is aligned with provincial regulations. Very briefly, we will be talking, provide a little update on waste reduction and some information on where our waste management statistics or stats are, and then dive into waste diversion management plans and the bylaw changes related to that, as well as walk through some minor bylaw amendments. Some are housekeeping, some are new, related to the solid waste utility bylaw, the demolition waste diversion bylaw, and the business license bylaw, as well as walk through the changes to the single-use items bylaw. So just, I'm not going to read through this, but just to remind Council, the recommendations that are in the report to Council are currently on the screen. The first three are all amendments, and the bottom one is a repeal and replace of the single-use items bylaw. Before I dive into the the different bylaw amendments, I want to share some exciting news with you beyond the circular economy challenge. So over the years, the district has been investing in infrastructure and diversion programs such as recycling and organics at the curbside, comprehensive bylaw updates, zero waste workshops, circular economy, and a lot more. So on this slide is the amount of waste produced per person per year in Squamish. When we look at this over time, we can see the impact of our collective efforts. Since initiating the residential recycling program at the curb in 2009, we have seen a 51% decrease in the amount of garbage generated per person, when over the same time period, the town saw an 81% increase in population. Of note, the increases around 2019 and 2020 on the screen reflect the impacts that we saw, as well as many other local governments saw regarding COVID. Many municipalities just saw an increase in garbage. Apparently everyone was at home doing renos and construction projects, and that we saw that impact on our data. And additionally, I'd like to note that while we accept waste at our landfill from the SLRD Electoral Area D and Squamish Nation, we've modeled this calculation so that it represents only the District of Squamish and not those other jurisdictions. To follow up on that previous screen, I'd like to share similar information, but it's presented slightly different. So the green bar at the bottom is the population increase in Squamish that has been seen over the past 9 years, which you can see has been trending upward. What I'd like to draw your eyes to is the purple line, which shows the generation rate of how much garbage, recycling, and compost is produced per person per year as a total number. Why we measure this is because all materials used have a footprint. So the target associated with this metric aims to reduce the total amount of materials used within our community. So while we're seeing that population increase, which does, bring with it people who are new to our recycling system, we also just general increased waste generation. The total amount of materials landfilled, recycled, or compost is continuing to decrease in our community. Factors in moving this dial on this work can be included in the continued work on increasing waste diversion and affecting behavior change. It is not always easy to associate these efforts with a dollar value. However, we can see that we've been able to eke out a little bit of extra time in our landfill's capacity due to this, as well as operational efficiencies at the site of our landfill. And while we are still on track to reach capacity at the landfill by the end of 2030. In September 2024, the District of Squamish conducted a waste composition audit at our landfill, where we looked at the garbage that comes in from the community, and we had auditors look through piece by piece what is coming in and breaking it down into over 70 plus different categories. What we have on the screen is the high level of the results. So you can see that only 30% of what comes into our landfill is residual, which actually means garbage. So this is what's coming to our landfill, whereas about 20.4% is compostable. Cogen is wood waste that could have been sent to a cogen facility and burnt in replace of coal. So at like a mill or something like that. So cogen and depot drop-off is materials that could have been brought to like the landfill transfer station or the bottle depot or, London Drugs in the recycling area. So that's about 18%. And then recyclables, which generally is recyclable through our curbside collection, is about, again, 30.8%. And then we've also calculated waste generation by sector. And why this is important is this is what facilitates where we can spend our efforts. Where is the best place to spend the money that the district has towards waste reduction and making impact on the table or the pie graph on the left. And so we see that single family residents homes produce about 27% of the garbage that comes to landfill. Multifamily homes is about 17%. Industrial, commercial, and institutional is 40%. Construction and demolition sector is 14%, and then our streetscape, which is the garbage cans on our streets and parks, is about 1%. Why there's an asterisk beside the multifamily home and the industrial, commercial, and institutional line items here is that those are properties that are often serviced by the same truck on a same route. So they are the best estimate that we can have while working with the waste haulers in town. So those are, I would say, rough percentages with some variation. Our approach to waste reduction and diversion is truly to use all the tools in our toolbox, not to be cliche. And these include infrastructure and services, policy and regulations, outreach and community engagement, financial incentives, collaboration and advocacy. And I mean, I always love to talk trash and could elaborate on this significantly. But however, I have limited time and do want to just give a brief update. And this does include, and this is not limited to the sustainability team's work, I have to say. So this is, for example, the launch of the Library of Things that was done by our the District of Squamish's library. It's also the work that's done around reviewing waste rooms and developments, and then also launching the first in BC curbside battery recycling program, which is very cool. But then also looking at the policy side, so requiring source separation of all businesses and residents, and then regulating single-use items. Our team is also focused on normalizing circularity and waste reduction behavior, including the event series that was mentioned earlier. These photos are all from some of our October events, as well as we do the summer curbside auditing program and circular economy trailblazer program through the economic development team. Looking forward at 2025, the intent is to reduce impact on the community's critical waste management infrastructure, which is in particular our landfill, and increase diversion while decreasing contamination. These are broad strokes as we're currently working on the 2025 work plan, but really focusing, as you remember, those percentages about where we can make impact. So looking at multifamily homes and the business community and really working towards developing a comprehensive program to educate and support their source separation. So essentially their diversion at their businesses or homes. And this would be a multi-year program. It's not a one-year program. And that includes updating guidance document and toolkits and different things like that, as well as outreach. Also, we are looking at implementing waste diversion management plans, which I'll speak to in the bylaw amendments, looking to continued support to increase deconstruction, accessibility for various events, and integrating zero waste in our corporate work. So looking at, as I mentioned in the audit, it was found that around 41% of waste received at the Squamish landfill is generated at essentially the business community. And it was found that about 27% of that material is compostable. So what the staff is presenting through the amendment to the solid waste utility bylaw and the business bylaw, with the clauses at the bottom of the screen as well in the report to council, is requiring new food service businesses to include a waste diversion management plan with their business license application. The intention is not to withhold a business license, but to open up a conversation with the applicant about the requirements of the district and opportunities that they may have that they haven't recognized as they're really starting a new business. This is, as I said, for new business license only, not the annual renewals. The District of Squamish recognizes that new businesses are going through a lot. There's a lot of things that they have to figure out and work through. So the intent is to make this process as easy as possible by providing supporting documents, a template, and it will be reviewed. And if a conversation needs to be had, that will be had, but it will not hold up the business license process. And I should mention, so this is really truly an opportunity for staff to engage at the beginning when a food service business is starting to set up, whereas where we are seeing is the waste that's coming to the landfill at the end. So we're trying to get to the kind of the beginning of the process to make impact. Additional minor bylaw amendments that are being brought to council. So these ones are all related to the solid waste and utility bylaw. What I want to mention is that 3 of these are revisions or clarification They're not new amendments. We're not bringing anything new in them. So the first one is around clarifying the district's ability to discontinue or suspend curbside collection for households that are not in compliance with our solid waste utility bylaw or wildlife attractant bylaw. And this is really related to wildlife attractant management and contamination for curbside collection. The next one is about enabling residents to order a second organic or recycling tote, as well as creating specific deadlines for the launch of the program outside of the current once a year deadline for tote exchanges. As this would allow households with large amounts of organic material recyclables to have the opportunity to increase their service without financially impacting those who do not want or need an increased service level. Additionally, the clause that's labeled C on the screen is to clarify the requirements around contamination of curbside collection totes and unserviced properties who do not receive our curbside collection services, to enable the district to enforce the bylaw if they find high levels of contamination. And the last one is to clarify that both its occupiers and owners of unserviced properties are required to sort their waste. Currently, it says it leans towards only owners. So this is again a clarification. On the other minor bylaw amendments in this package is the first one that is G on the screen is to the demolition waste diversion bylaw. So it is reducing the target of diversion rate for mobile home deconstruction as staff has been reviewing demolition permits and working through our demolition, green demolition bylaw process. It's come up that it is harder to disassemble mobile homes than other types of homes. So we want to make sure that we're not causing a financial penalty to those who have who are taking down a mobile home. There is still a target for them in the bylaw. It's just been reduced. As well as there are 3 housekeeping amendments to the business license bylaw. These are not related to solid waste management. However, the fact that we are bringing the business license bylaw to council, these are very housekeeping items. As I mentioned, Colin McCarthy, the manager of building services, is here to address these, but they're really about amending definitions and also adding the bylaw enforcement officer and license and property use inspector to the list of authorities that may enter a property. So with that, I'll turn this over to Mrs. Wittenzellner to walk through the single-use items and the changes that are being proposed.
Thank you. So the next portion of the presentation will focus entirely on our recommended repeal and replace of the single-use items reduction bylaw. On December 20th, 2023, the Provincial Single-Use and Plastic Waste Provincial Regulation, very wordy, came into effect with one of several implementation phases. This regulation is focused on phasing out certain single-use items and plastic items to reduce waste and pollution in British Columbia. It is in effect across the province, and all businesses must comply with it. Enforcement sits with the province, and it is entirely complaint-based at this point in time. I'd like to mention it was noted that in the report to council, accidentally the wrong implementation date was included. It was December 20th, 2023. So staff are recommending to repeal our current single-use items reduction bylaw and replace it with a new bylaw, which will be aligned with the provincial regulation. Before I talk about why this alignment is recommended, I will focus on the core differences of the existing single-use items reduction bylaw and the new one intended to replace it. So currently, by the district bylaw, the minimum shopping bag charges are 75 cents for a recycled paper bag and $2.75 for a reusable bag. The provincial regulation includes a minimum fee of 25 cents for a recycled paper bag and $2 for a reusable bag, so slightly lower. We recommend aligning the minimum fees with the provincial regulation to make the adjustment easier for consumers and for businesses that have locations outside of Squamish as well. It's important to note, though, that this is a minimum fee, so businesses can still opt to keep their higher fees or have them higher in general. And the next point is food serviceware. Under the current bylaw, single-use plastic straws, plastic stir sticks, and plastic utensils are prohibited in Squamish already. The new bylaw, aligned with the provincial regulation, goes beyond that and regulates that food service providers can generally only give out disposable food service accessories, including utensils, condiments, straws, garnishes, napkins, and drink cublets and sleeves, only on request. Single-use utensils made with plastic are generally prohibited. Oxo-degradable plastics are not currently regulated under our bylaw, whereas the new bylaw would prohibit the distribution or sale of any packaging or single-use products that contain oxo-degradable plastics. We would also like to keep the clause that businesses have to provide accessible straws to anyone who needs them. Accessible straw means a drinking straw made wholly of plastic that is not compostable or biodegradable, has a corrugated section that allows the straw to bend and maintain its position, and is individually wrapped in paper. We consider it important to require that businesses continue to stock accessible straws for people with disabilities, reduced mobility, or other medical needs. So generally, the new bylaw, as aligned with the provincial regulation, goes into more detail and provides more in-depth regulation of single-use items. And in summary, just to repeat those thoughts, we would like to repeal the existing bylaw and replace it with the new one for several reasons. We think that harmonizing the bylaw with the provincial regulation makes the implementation easier for businesses with locations outside of Squamish as well. We do think that having the same rules across the province makes it easier for residents to adjust to them. It will also allow us to use materials and tools for education and awareness that is provided by the province. And while it would be possible to just repeal our bylaw and rely solely on the provincial regulation, we would like to keep the opportunity to locally enforce. In addition, if the provincial regulation ever gets repealed, we will still be able to have our locally enforceable bylaw. Lots of information. We can talk about it more.
Thank you. And with that, the staff recommendation to bring it to council is that honestly, I don't know if I need to read through these. I looked through, they're quite wordy, but there are 4 recommendations for council to consider, and we are more than happy to answer questions that anyone may have. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I think we all love talking trash with you too. Yeah, okay, we'll move on to questions. Councillor French?
As much as I love talking trash, I love talking compost even more. I'll get to that. So from the very first slide, I'm wondering if you have data and statistics from the rest of the province that give us an indication of how Squamish is doing compared to other communities. Like, are we one of the leaders in reducing, or are we lagging behind, somewhere in the middle? Any thoughts?
Thank you through the chair. Unfortunately, the data that is collected for this type of thing is collected at a regional level. So the province does report out on it, maybe annually, I'm actually not sure, but it's very much at the regional level. So we are in a fortunate position to have a landfill and be able to collect data at our local level. But yeah, unfortunately, it's a little bit tough.
Yeah, okay, understandable. And I would suspect that we're probably one of the leaders around the province, just based on my own experience of traveling around to different places and the programs that are or not in place around the province. Curious to know what prevents us from requiring food services businesses seeking a business license renewal to submit a waste diversion plan. So where we're headed is to require new food services business to submit that. But I would like to see existing businesses as part of their renewals, even if it was like maybe once every 5 years. So submit a plan and then submit a revision some years later. What prevents us from doing something like that?
Thank you through the chair. So currently the current program is as proposed is to roll it out slowly, if I can say it like that. As we have spoken to other communities who have a similar program and they have seen it to be very effective. However, we want to make sure that the template is a good fit and that the advice we're giving and the guidance documents we have. So the intent is to support those new businesses who are opening up within the community. That being said, staff can add assessing, including renewals as like the next step of this program.
Great. That's a fabulous answer. I would hate for us to take on too much out of the gate and then not do a good job of it. So I think the strategy you've just outlined makes total sense and I support it. Chair, my final question is not fully formed, but I'm going to hopefully keep a preamble as short as I can to get to a compost question. So I have some previous life experience in the world of waste collection when I spent a few years working for Kearney's Waste Systems. And it was at a time when compostable products were really starting to come into significant use. And something that I struggled with then and continue to now is this notion of compostable, biodegradable. It feels like it's still a little bit the Wild West in the world of products that are labeled compostable and biodegradable, because some of them, even though they carry those labels, contain fossil fuels or microplastics. So when they break down, they do not truly compost and they are not truly biodegradable. So where we're going in banning these products, I'm thinking one step further to when, not if, when we're ready to pull that back, because it's not the wild, wild west anymore. And products that are labeled compostable and or biodegradable truly are compostable and biodegradable. So could you talk a little bit about how, when we get to that point, we go about readjusting our bylaws so that those things are no longer banned? Does that make sense?
Thank you through the chair. So just to make sure I understand is, how do we accommodate the change in technology that turns compostable, biodegradable actually into compostable, physically compostable products? How would we address that with our bylaw?
Yeah, that's way more concise than what I just said.
I can start and then do you want to? Okay, so I think essentially, as we are aligning our bylaw with the provincial regulation, I would say I would look to see kind of we would look to see what their guidance is. Anything that the District of Squamish chooses to do above and beyond the provincial regulation requires the District of Squamish to apply to the Ministry of Environment for an exemption and an authority to do it. So at that time, if they being the province, hasn't amended their regulation to allow for this better compostable product, the District of Squamish could pursue that path of amending our bylaw and applying for ministerial approval.
Yeah, through the chair, I would just add to this possibly that I would second what Ms. White says. I think the province and also the federal government obviously have a different access to a lot more data than we do and see what's happening in other parts of Canada and the province as well. But with, I think with advancements technologically, we want to make sure that the products are biodegradable and compostable and that facilities exist that can handle them. And I think this is a really critical one when we consider amending a bylaw again to allow for that.
Very good. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. I have Councillor Pettengill up next, followed by Mayor Herford.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to hear Councillor French's question about existing food services businesses and satisfied with the plan to look at them once we get our feet under us with the new businesses. A couple other questions. Can I get some clarification on our ability or the practicality, like legislative ability or the practicality of checking ICI contamination at the landfill upon receipt, as opposed to sort of, it sounds like we're trying to incentivize at the site separation, which I understand, but I got the feeling like there's, in a perfect world, we'd be able to inspect or audit at the landfill and we're not able to for some reason, or if I misunderstood that.
Thank you through the chair. I'll just repeat the question to make sure I understood because there was a little bit of crackling, for a better word. So we're looking for clarification about our ability to refuse or impact ICI loads or industrial, commercial, institutional loads at the landfill to support diversion, right?
Yeah, is that something we can inspect or check or enforce upon receipt at the landfill?
Great. Thank you through the chair. So and truly the District of Squamish is taking a lot of different approaches to this, to making this change in behavior through the business community. And so at the landfill, we have what is called the band surcharge, which is applied to any load, residential or commercial, that has over 5% recyclables by weight or volume. That's found. So if somebody dumps a load and it is full of cardboard and wood waste, then it is inspected. It is part of the contract of our landfill operator to inspect the majority of loads. And then they radio and to the scale hut and take pictures, and there's this band surcharge is applied. It is significant, I should add. So currently our tipping fee is $232 per metric ton. The band surcharge is an additional 296, I believe. I can verify that, but it's about $296 on top per metric ton. So it over doubles the rate. So we do inspect, and that system has been based on the system that Metro Vancouver has in place. What we're finding though is that there are people who are just willing to pay the rate. So that's why we're taking different approaches. What else can we do? So that's where this waste diversion plan is. Maybe we can get ahead of the waste that's created before it comes to landfill. So we're continuing to inspect. So yes, at the landfill, there is a system in place, but it's currently, maybe it's discouraging some people, but it's not discouraging the majority.
Okay, thank you. And then my other question was on page 70 of the updated bylaws, and I can't remember which one it is, but it's page 70 of our package. The language seemed to exclude not-for-profits in the regulation. It seemed to focus only on for-profit business. And I'm just wondering if that was intentional or if I misunderstood what the language is saying. I think it's the new definition for business. It's the single-use items bylaw.
Yeah, I believe that was the single-use items reduction bylaw. That was not intentional to leave out. We can refine the definition. Although I might have to double check. No, it wasn't not intentional to leave that out.
Okay, and I guess if that is something we should adjust as part of our resolution, it would be helpful to have what that wording would be.
It's to add maybe the definitions are largely, we took the definitions from the provincial regulations largely. Yeah, and this one would be a direct copy from the provincial regulation.
Okay, so does that mean sort of as written, it would include not-for-profits, or are they not-for-profits meant to be sort of exempt from this?
Through the chair, my understanding at this time is that non-for-profits are just as much included in this. I don't have the understanding of the definition that they're not. And my understanding is the provincial regulation applies to them as well, as it includes all organizations, basically.
Okay, that wasn't clear to me, but if we're comfortable that that's what the bylaw says, then I think I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Herford?
Yes, thank you. My question is around this the business licensing aspect of this, which I think is, first of all, a wonderful mechanism given what we've come to understand about diversion rates in that category. But I wondered around just, I'm still not entirely comfortable with this starting with the new, exclusively with new businesses. Our established businesses may have more resources and absolutely have more experience in trying to tackle these issues, and solutions that may work for new businesses may not be practical for existing businesses, which is where the bulk of the problem is. So I just wondered how I don't think it needs to be in the bylaw, but including some language to our existing businesses, like, hey, this is what we ask of new business licenses, and you may be asked for this in the future at a renewal, might be enough for me, but which doesn't need to be captured in the bylaw. It can be sort of a foreshadowing of a potential future step, and hey, this is our expectations of a new business. But putting that burden exclusively on new businesses, I haven't quite reconciled that. So I guess my question is, to turn it into a question, is, has economic development weighed in on these measures, sort of in that broad scope of like new businesses versus established businesses, and who should bear the brunt of this first wave of attempting to address this issue?
Thank you, through the chair. So to further elaborate on the new business, why we're moving forward with them, is the idea is that a new business, as they're looking to set up, they're applying for business license, they're complying with all the other business license particulars, is that that's the opportunity for them to potentially look at their kitchen and say, okay, we're going to need a compost bin and a garbage bin. And oh yeah, we create a lot of soft plastics, so we should have a soft plastics bin, or we have a lot of glass and we should have a glass bin. So they're almost in a better position to more easily begin to source separate, because they're still in that design, if we can call it the design phase of their business. The intent is not to put more cost on them, but to have it better incorporated into their business. Whereas with current or pre-existing businesses, it's going to be a bit more of a lift for some of them, because they might already have a kitchen, but they don't have a compost bin, and they might not have space for a compost bin because it hasn't been accounted for when they built out their kitchen, for example. So that is why we have thought that a new business would be an easier kind of beginning step for this program, and then roll it into hopefully existing businesses. And just to add on to your comment is that I don't want to overspeak on business licensing the website, but there is probably space where we can add like an element at the bottom of the business license website that just says like, FYI, this is what's happening. If you are a pre-existing business and want to incorporate this, here's the tools that new businesses have to comply with. So we could start to incorporate it probably that way, but we would have to work with the building and business license department on that.
Yeah, I think appreciate the sort of that explanation. I think to that your point around perhaps there's not space allocated for this in the existing businesses is exactly the point where now a new business coming to the same space needs to acquire more space to accomplish conduct the same business. So I think that very proactively sort of showing the existing business community that this is the expectation going forward would really be helpful, where perhaps that can be incorporated into renovation plans that we may not otherwise be on the radar of problems they're trying to solve as they go about making investments and refinements in their business practices. But I don't think that needs to be captured in the bylaw itself. Like I'm supportive of this direction, but I think our existing businesses, we need to communicate that this is an expectation, and perhaps it's triggered not at business license renewal, but in a future revision of this. We can look at maybe when they're doing leasehold improvements or some other steps where they're making an investment, they're rethinking their space, and that this is the priority that they that is a priority that they need to solve for going forward. So thank you, but that was my wrestling around. This piece has been the biggest piece of this for me, but I'm happy with those comments. I'm happy with where we've landed.
Okay, thank you. If I could ask you to just put your hand down, please, Mayor Herford. I have Councillor Hamilton and then followed by Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks very much for the work. I'm also hesitant to see this being only applied to new businesses. I see us implementing in a way. I know the intent is not to impose additional cost, but ultimately that will be the impact. There will be space required. There will be human resources required to sort the material. There will be multiple pickups for the waste from whatever waste service provider the business has. So while it's not the intent, the impact will be some additional cost to our new businesses, which we're not imposing on our existing businesses. So to me, I'm not terribly comfortable with that. I think that we should be implementing something broadly across all of our businesses upon business license renewal. I understand the hesitation, the staff wanting to make sure they do things properly. So let me ask, what resources do you think you would require from a budgeting perspective to get it together so that you can put a waste reduction plan bylaw in place for all businesses at one time? Can we supply the solid waste division with more resources so that you can do it all at once?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Bill. Oh, sorry.
Thank you. Through the chair, Megan Latimer, General Manager of Community Services here at the district. That certainly staff can take away and bring back. We wouldn't be able to answer that on the fly, though.
Thank you. Maybe I'd just like to add something that was mentioned in the presentation, but we didn't elaborate on, is that there is a source separation requirement in our solid waste utility bylaw since 2016 for all businesses and residents in our community. And so one of the 2025 projects, in addition to this waste diversion management program, is to develop a comprehensive program to work with our current business community about source separations. So the intent is at this point in time not to tie it to business licensing as proposed, but to see how else we can support them. Very similar to the Trailblazer Circular Economy Program, which offered support for businesses one-on-one. We're trying to look at how can we, at a cost-effective manner, support the business community in understanding their requirements for waste diversion, and that it's actually not a nice to have, it is mandatory. And so kind of better, I don't want to say enforcing, because we won't be enforcing the solid waste utility bylaw, but educating and supporting the business community about those requirements. So that is actually a large piece of work for the team next year. But as I mentioned, it's not currently, that is not linked to the business license bylaw business license application process, if that makes sense.
Can I add to that?
Oh, and
Through the chair. Shannon consulted with the building department. We administrated and enforced the business license bylaw at length prior to this. And I appreciate that. The fact is that I think that the intention, the education piece is really effective with new businesses. And it also puts us in the driver's seat with the language in that bylaw, in that we can choose to highlight certain businesses within our own internal process and say that we want to ensure that we get a plan with this particular type of business, perhaps not with another type of business. It allows us to be in control of our own resources. And also when it is at this time, primarily with new businesses, we're not able to anticipate as accurately if we were to say at this point, we want to receive a waste management plan from all existing businesses and what we might do with that. That puts us in a position of needing to receive all of these plans and educate an endless number of businesses about what they're doing at that time. And the idea when we collaborated on this plan was that to implement it this way with that particular language, with new businesses only, this is a reference in our bylaw that sort of gives us a plan, but the compliance piece is with an entirely other bylaw. And if we want to provide education through social media or other ways to advise people that they do need to be compliant with the solid waste diversion regulations we have, we can do that. But all we've done is we've grabbed this one opportunity with some new businesses to say, let's focus on these businesses, let's get a plan, educate them, and ask them to submit us a compliant plan before we issue them a business license. It puts us in the driver's seat, and it is a step in the right direction. I just thought you might want to know from the enforcement side why we agreed with solid waste on this one. Thank you.
So if I understand correctly, the plan that is submitted by the new business is their plan to comply with our existing bylaw, which existing businesses should be complying with already, but we're not enforcing it, so they don't really need to. Is that what I understand? Do I understand that correctly?
yes, that's correct.
Through the chair, just a follow-up. How much it's being enforced may vary. What we don't know, we don't always know. And that's, those businesses would be possibly in that category. We're not proactively going out and checking on those businesses, which is the case with a lot of the bylaws in the district. We enforce to the practicality and nature that we can enforce.
Okay, thanks. I still have to think about this. It's not clear to me that. Yeah, okay, thanks. I just got to think about it some more.
Thanks. Councillor Anderson.
My first question concerns the, am I up? Sorry, I didn't. Yeah, thank you. The curbside battery recycling pickup program. I'm just wanting to know if we can assume that the main cost in that is the driver stepping out of the truck to the bin. And why I ask that is that is also a function, a process that's relevant for stickering and tagging bins for educational purposes. So is that indeed the main cost item in the battery recycling, is the driver and the extra pickup process time?
Thank you, through the chair. So the recycling of batteries is actually run through an extended producer responsibility program, so an EPR program, which is funded through the sale of batteries. And so I'm happy to say that this program costs the Squamish taxpayers no dollars, except for staff time in communicating it and supporting through educating residents. It is fully funded by the battery recycling program. They approached Squamish and asked if we wanted to be the first municipality to do this because they know that we embrace diversion and we're very proactive about it, and they approached us. So I can assume that the cost would be what you're talking about, but we have had zero involvement with the cost.
Thank you. My second question, The change to the solid waste utility bylaw regarding ordering a second organic or recycling tote. Now that is a person or a business or a premises that will order an extra tote for a year in duration, more or less. Can we think about a program where a person or a business may order a tote for a temporary period? And why I ask is because a gardener or somebody involved in generating yard waste, the key months are November, March, and April when we don't have that service. And if we're going to continue, we will continue to have that conversation. But I'm just wondering if there's a scenario of looking at temporary rental or obtaining a tote for somebody with substantial. My own experience, pruning one tree fills up an entire tote. And many people have more than one tree or shrub in their yard, in their garden. But is there some kind of what is the temporal period that we have in the current proposal, and what could we look forward to in a program for yard waste?
Thank you, through the chair. So the program that is being proposed through the bylaw amendments is a pilot program for 2 years. The intent is that it will be reviewed in 2026 and identified whether it should be brought forward in the future budgets cycle as it impacts the utility fees of the residents. There is currently no review of having a temporary program where residents can sign up. I must say that it is highly administrative to change residents' totes from district of staff perspective. It impacts the actually the finance team significantly. So that is a consideration into why this was made as an annual program for those residents who need it and would like it.
Thank you. My third question concerns the changes to the demolition deconstruction bylaw. This time around, we're focusing on reducing the target diversion rate for mobile home deconstruction, which makes entire sense to me. Over the last few months, though, since August, I personally witnessed or seen social media discussion and photos of 3 home demolitions, one in downtown South and 2 in Brackendale. And I've seen both two of those sites. One of them had a good amount of quite valuable Douglas fir, 1930s house. And so my question is, if we are to consider a program to facilitate allowing material salvage companies to contact home or property owners for salvaging opportunities, what is the mechanism for that? In the embodied emissions guide document, which our Ian Picketts was involved in shaping a couple of years ago, I'll just quote from it, creating the solution then would be, or is proposed as creating public-facing information about homes slated for demolition at the building permit application stage. My question is, what would be the mechanism if we were to consider that as a policy? What's the mechanism? Which bylaw is it? And we have our building department here, we may be able to inform on this. How would we implement such a program if we were to consider this? Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. As far as implementation of something new, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to help with that, but I can let you know that there is public facing information about who is responsible for any building permit, and that includes a demolition permit. There's a specific amount of that information that is available on our website once an application is in queue. I remember back at the time, it used to be a list on paper. The local contractors would come in and try and get a drywall contract by checking that list, and that list still exists in one form or another. I believe it's available on the website. And there's also a clause in our building bylaw that requires that a permit is posted on site. And we provide we've got a bit of a hybrid. It's not the permit specifically that we provide them. We provide them with a copy of the permit. It's more of an administrative document, but we also provide a permit placard. And the expectation is that that permit placard is proof of the existence of a building permit that includes the permit number, the address of the site, and contact information. The contact information on that, historically, the idea has been to contact someone who's responsible for that site should there be safety issues, noise issues, it might be suitable for the same thing. It is usually the primary contact. Sometimes a developer or a property owner will take that on themselves, or sometimes they will request that information be changed to their general contractor, who would be the most knowledgeable about the site.
Thank you. That does give some valuable orientation. I expect it's something that we'll continue to discuss, how we can create opportunity and alleviate burdens on our landfill through reshaping our demolition progress or processes. I note that a couple of contractors around town in the demolition field have added deconstruction to their service advertisements. And so we may have probably a few people around town willing and eager to jump on opportunities of sites if we can coordinate with the property owner and the development process. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. Does anybody have any other questions? I don't see any hands up or... Okay, I have a couple questions of my own. I just wanted to seek a little bit of clarity, maybe for the people tuning in. The minor bylaw amendment 4.5, 4.8 for the wildlife attractant management. And I was just wondering, yeah, how that is changing. Did that make sense?
Thank you. So just to make sure I'm clear, this is the one about discontinuing or suspending services?
Yes, I just have a couple of concerns because I think as it stands right now, there is, well, one of the issues that I have had with this particular piece of the bylaw is nobody in my neighborhood has a garage, so there's nowhere to put their totes, and I think that is part of the bylaw. But then the other piece is that and then the other piece was that when our totes get damaged because bears come by, it's very difficult to get replacement totes from GFL. And I was just wondering where that kind of interface is considered in this.
Thank you, through the chair. So there's a couple of pieces. So totes should be replaced within 24 hours of reporting them. So that is concerning to hear that it's not happening. So please elevate that to myself or GFL if you wish, and we can follow up directly with that. Sorry, it's 24 hours or 48 hours. It's one or the other. Apologies, I don't have the contract memorized at this point in time, but so that is an expectation of our curbside collection provider. So the amendments that are being proposed to the solid waste utility bylaw around clarifying. So the ability to discontinue or suspend service was already in the bylaw before. However, we've been struggling in the sense that there are some households that continually have essentially gross contamination levels. Gross not being disgusting, but large amounts. So full of, construction material or a vacuum cleaner or stuff like this, which is now causing the District of Squamish financial penalties. And so what we are looking to do is very clearly establish a process, ideally to suspend, not discontinue, a household from the services until they're able to work with us to make sure that they understand the requirements around contamination, but also around wildlife management. There is no place in the solid waste utility bylaw that requires curbside collection bins to be stored inside. It has been explored internally. However, it's due to houses that have no garages, for example, or sheds to put it, that it has been decided, it has never been pursued to implement. So our bylaw team is very proactive around making sure that totes are locked when they're not at the curb. And then also GFL is also working to make sure that totes are being repaired proactively in the kind of off season of bears, if you want to call it that. So there are places where it is. That being said, I think the wildlife attractant piece is mainly around if we continually find one household that's really, or a complex that's really struggling with bears accessing their totes, even if they are locked. And this has happened. Potentially, do we suspend the service for, X amount of time, and we require them to put in a centralized tote or centralized waste system? to cover, the times when bears are most active, and then bring back the totes in those seasons. It's something that we want to explore, and I have not been really had the ability because the language in our bylaw was very vague. There is a very active wildlife working group. We work very closely with the COs, the conservation officers, as well as the wildlife response service, wildlife safety officer. We're working with the Conservation Service Office on this. And so it's not taken lightly. I just want to say when we work with the wildlife attractant piece, it's a collaborative effort to find solutions, and this would be a last case resort. And also-
Okay.
yeah, sorry, and just I'll add is that there are communities that are doing the suspension around contamination in particular, where residents have to, do a little bit of online test and get their knowledge up to speed, and then they get it back. So we're looking at how it's been modeled in other communities.
Okay, thank you. And continuing with the wildlife attractant piece, I've had a few interactions with people in the public who are concerned that people who move here, not very many people are used to having bears come into their front yard on a regular basis. And so there's a lot of people who are just, innocently ignorant of the fact that they need to be wildlife aware with their garbage. I was wondering if the district sees value in, or if the district currently engages in any education for newcomers to the community effectively, or, for people who already live here, but especially for newcomers.
Thank you through the chair. We had at least 2 outreach opportunities this year at the farmers market and the Brackendale Fall Fair, where we collaborated with conservation services. I was there for one of them myself, and this was really targeted around wildlife safe waste management. And we talked about how to manage wildlife attractants and what does this even mean, and how to basically responsibly handle your waste. And we found that it actually attracted a lot of new residents. We intentionally scheduled this for the fall so that we wouldn't necessarily see only tourists at the farmers market, but lots of residents. And I found it was a really, a very, very successful initiative that we'd like to do more of. Great conversations and great questions, including questions about where to store totes and how can it be done if there is no garage. And we had a few sketches for little enclosures that can be built and suggestions that we're hoping to circulate more. And then we are working on updating a new residence package or letter that we then can distribute that includes a more in-depth section on wildlife safe waste management for anyone moving here. And we're considering strongly how to distribute that most effectively to new residents in town.
Okay, thank you. A couple, I do have a concern when we start moving away from these very greenwashed compostable products through some of our bylaws. Is there any concern that that's going to drive people back to using just plastics? Is there any protection for that?
Through the chair, it's an interesting question. I don't necessarily think so. I think that looking at the bylaw, it does eliminate, yes, both biodegradable and compostable plastics to some extent, but also general plastics is eliminated for a lot of the items. So I don't think that we'll see that backlash, no.
Well, that's good. And I appreciate the efforts to move towards less environmentally damaging products, but it's still all rooted in that cradle to grave waste model. And I was just wondering if the district or staff have any ideas of how to encourage our local food businesses, and I'm including food trucks in this definition, but to move away from single use period and adopt like a more reusable system. Has there been, it ties into the entire circular economics conversation and everything, but having, I know there are regions that have that kind of reusable food packaging system. Has there been any conversations around that?
Yes, thank you. There's always lots going on in our field, so we're just like, which part do we talk about specifically? So staff did explore requiring in this kind of large package of bylaw amendments, staff did explore requiring businesses, food and service businesses to have on-site dining only have reusables, serviceware. So basically only have coffee cups that are ceramic, for example, or plates. However, it was, we have since found out, and there was some engagement with the community, with the business community. However, the District of Squamish does not have the authority under provincial regulations to regulate that. So the District of Squamish could apply for ministerial approval, as the City of Victoria has done, to add that element into our single-use items bylaw, but we would not be able to make that amendment here in this point in time, for example. That being said, it was considered whether that should be brought as part of this package to apply. However, when we thought about how many businesses would actually be impacted and the amount of staff time it would require to apply for the approval and ministerial approval, it was decided that there was better use of staff time and other to make larger impact within our business community. That being said, we will pay attention to what's happening with the City of Victoria's bylaw and what's happening there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's not ready for, it's not bylaw material at the moment, but it's good to hear that it's on people's radar. Are there any other questions for staff here? Oh, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. Still grappling with this question of how to manage a transition of our existing businesses into our existing solid waste diversion bylaw. In section 4.5 of our waste diversion bylaw, that's where we have the amendment here to give us more power on the ability to discontinue or suspend residential curbside collection. Is there anywhere in our bylaw, and I haven't read it in detail through, where we have the ability to discontinue or suspend commercial or ICI collection?
Thank you through the chair. That is a great question. No, the answer, we don't have, as we do not provide the service, we can't discontinue it. The District of Squamish only offers curbside residential waste management system, not an ICI. There are other communities that do offer that. However, there are significant expenses associated with it. That being said, that is why we have the ban surcharge. We've been trying to impact change at the landfill through the financial incentives that are there.
Thanks. And my understanding of the difficulty with the ban surcharge is that the truck goes out, picks up from a bunch of different commercial businesses, and by the time that truck gets to the landfill, you can't tell which waste came from which business, and so you can't allocate some kind of enforcement to a single business because it's coming in the whole truck. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I'm going to have, I would like to see some type of plan to enforce is perhaps too strong a word, but require our existing businesses to have plans. I'm thinking about how to amend a motion because I agree with the emotion, the staff plan as is to start with new businesses, but I think it's extremely important that we start fast with existing businesses because that's where we're going to make the actual impact. Just looking at new businesses, it's going to make an impact in 10 or 20 years. But I think we have to act faster, and I'd like to see a plan for acting faster.
Okay, any other comments? So I'll be looking for a motion here. Yes, Councillor French.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any comments?
Yeah, well, yes, I'm moving all four. And Chair, I'm totally open to amendments if anybody has got one ready to roll. So just speaking in favor of the motion, it's clear to me that District of Squamish staff, probably in conjunction with consultants, have put a great deal of thought into these amendments, and I appreciate the work and the contemplation that went into generating the report and the recommended amendments. Like some of my colleagues, I do have some hesitation of some of the details and some of the specifics. Having said that, though, I think that the direction this takes us is highly appropriate and sets us up quite nicely for changes in the future as technology adjusts and as our population grows.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson.
One of the elements of the presentation today that I found interesting was the population trend for the District of Squamish and our waste management success story, if you like. But a takeaway from that graph for me is that is how important it is that we focus on the multifamily homes as a growing element or part of the picture of our built environment. It happens that on the subject of the change of the demolition and construction bylaw for mobile home deconstruction, it happens that the longtime director or executive director of the Manufactured Home Association of BC is a Squamish person, Gord Rattray, and somebody that's always an engaging person to speak with about industry trends when we bump into each other at UBCM, for example. And I look forward to a discussion with Mr. Rattray about industry conversations regarding not only manufactured homes, but modular building, which is a growing trend also here. And what the industry is saying about how we can amend practices in those sectors to facilitate future recycling and at the other end of the building life cycle. Finally, excuse me, I'm just going to find my notes here. I note that the 7.7% of the waste stream is cogen raw material or fuel for a cogen plant. Recently, Mayor Herford, myself, and Councillor Greenlaw, I think it was the three of us that attended at the House Sound Community Forum event where there's a presentation from House on Pulp and Paper. Now, House on Pulp and Paper is the cogen plant in our region, and it's not so long ago that the District of Squamish and other players had difficulties in offloading material to that plant. Now, that new, relatively new boiler plant received a lot of public subsidy from the federal government a number of years ago. So I would just pass on through staff to GFL that if we are having issues in offloading that type of fuel material for House on Pulp and Paper, bring it to our attention as we can confer with our colleagues in other municipalities around House Sound, because one of the issues that has come up with respect to House on Pulp and Paper is how can we improve our partnership for the benefit of our region? Because the fact is that the raw material fuel source for their cogen plant comes from the interior, doesn't come from our region. And maybe we can encourage them to consider our region first, if you like, with respect to fuels for their boiler plant. And that's something you can pass on to our elected persons, because we can have those conversations with House Sound Pulp and Paper and with our House Sound colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Herford.
Yes, thank you. Video going here as well. Thank you. I'm supportive of the motion as presented. I think
Sorry, Mayor Herford, it's very difficult to hear you. I think you're a little bit muffled. Maybe hold up your microphone and maybe turn off your camera.
Can you hear me now? Is it better or worse?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Thanks.
Okay. So thank you. I'm supportive of the motion. I accept the rationale around the business licensing piece, given that there's other mechanisms out there for our existing businesses. But I think over time, it's important that we align these things between the new businesses and existing businesses. So I wouldn't want this to sort of persist. I think we need to really actively be working towards alignment of these two policies over a relatively short period of time. So it becomes how our businesses operate. But I think the sort of the nuance around making this information available and educate to our existing businesses and educating them, that doesn't live inside this bylaw amendment. So, but I do know that that staff is working hard on that issue. So I have a high level of confidence that that will sort of work its way through over time, but that over time isn't too far away. And the reason I'm focusing on this piece of this was really the slides in the presentation today and in the staff report were really eye-opening to the percentages that ICI sector contributes to our waste streams, and really it deserves our attention. And I think this is a good step in that direction. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the impacts of this as we move forward. So I'll leave it there for now, and I'm sure I'll have more to say when we get to readings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks very much. Mayor Herford said it very well, that the implementing this bylaw throughout our existing business owners is not part of the structure of this bylaw. So I absolutely agree with supporting these four staff recommendations. Regarding the single-use items, I didn't speak to that at all. I'm absolutely in favor of aligning with the provincial regulations. While I'm a little bit hesitant to maintain our own bylaws on top of the provinces, I do see the rationale for it, particularly for that ability to enforce. Because if we don't have our own bylaws, we need to wait for the province to enforce, which is outside of our control. So, yeah, there. I'll speak in support of this motion, and I will have another motion after this.
Okay, thanks. So speaking in support of the motion, I really enjoy hearing about all the creative and innovative initiatives that you have going on. You're pursuing to reduce waste and thereby cost for our community. I also appreciate the proactive approach that you're taking with this of reducing waste by asking new businesses to consider diversion on the onset, to incorporate it in the design as opposed to afterthought and retrofitting, which I think staff's comments were accurate. I suspect that is much costlier and more difficult. I'm not terribly concerned that it will be, overly burdensome for new businesses, as most people are acclimatized to waste separation already at their homes. And I'd like to amplify some of the comments that are coming out about aligning the policy between new and existing businesses, eventually. As for the wildlife learning curve for new residents, I do wonder if something simple could be done, like asking local realtors if they would be willing to include a pamphlet about bear awareness for people who have just purchased a home or for new residents to our community. Just to spread that education, because I have heard a few people concerned. I almost ran into a bear on the connector trail the other day, so they're around, and they're doing things, and we'd like to keep them safe in our community as well, and ourselves safe too. As to my comments about reusable takeout and dining containers, I suspect that the solution will realistically come from the private sector, but I appreciate the staff has that in their minds. And I hope there are some synergies that come out with our wonderful circular economic initiatives that are also ongoing. So thank you. And we'll vote on the motion now. All in favor? I don't see. I have no idea what Councillor Hamilton or Councillor Pettengill and Pettengill's got his hand up and sorry. Are there any opposed? Okay, unanimous. And then Councillor Hamilton, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I'd like to test a motion. I have confidence that staff are working in this direction. I just want to make sure that they have clarity that is council's desire, if it is council's desire. So I'd like to put forward a motion that staff bring back a plan or a proposal on how they will implement the waste management plans throughout existing businesses, not just new businesses.
Seconded by Councillor French. Would you like to comment?
I think that we've spoken about this before, and I think my the point stands.
Hey, you already made the comment. Okay, so all in favor? Oh wait, does Mayor Herford, do you have a comment?
Yeah, yes. I like this sort of the initiative here. I wonder about the maybe to amend it to say to incorporate that into the next update to council, because council does receive updates on this from time to time rather than a specific task. Just to be efficient with timing, so I'm going to propose an amendment that that says to be included with the next solid waste update to progress report to council. There's a seconder.
Seconded by Councillor French.
Thank you. Just I think this makes this supportable to me. I don't want to direct just a specific piece of work on this, but I do expect to see it when we see a report on this topic next. I know we have a lot of work underway with solid waste in general, so this topic in general will be coming back to us as we continue to work on our landfill and other issues, and just its own, which I feel we were in danger of directing with the original motion. So I'm hoping for support for for my amendment. Thank you.
All right, well, shall we vote on the motion as amended? Well, okay, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? So unanimous, and then all in favor of the motion? Unanimous, as amended. Okay, thank you. That concludes this part of the meeting. We are now a few minutes behind. So I think we'll reconvene at 1:15, if that's okay. Is that okay? Okay, 1:15. Oh, Chris, are you there? And Mayor Herford, I just saw him.
Mayor Herford is here.
Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Thanks for that sound check.
sound check.
Just so you know, we're coming through the lap of the Malahat, so the coverage here might be a bit odd, but I think we should be good when we're on the other side of the presentation.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Did we fix that sound piece? Plan being presented by Mr. McMurty, our Manager of Transportation. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Thank you, committee. My name is Brent McMurty. I'm the Manager of Transportation, and here with Roy Symons from ISL Engineering, who's the project manager on for the consulting side of this project. And we're going to provide an update on the draft transportation master plan and look for feedback from committee today. So a quick agenda of what we're going to talk through. We'll provide an overview of the process that we've used to advance this plan. Roy will provide an overview of the plan structure and selected highlights, plus key recommendations. We'll then provide a summary of some of the second round of engagement highlights, and then get into the implementation component of the plan that wasn't presented publicly during the second round of engagement, and then leave opportunity for the committee's questions after that. So this project started back in October of 2022 and has worked through both technical analysis and options evaluation, plus 2 rounds of engagement to get us to council here today in November 2024. So the project started by reviewing precedent plans and policies through the district has previously endorsed, collecting data to support understanding how people are moving today and what some of the potential considerations are moving into the future. The first round of engagement, we received feedback from community members and stakeholders and partners on what key interests and priorities are for transportation within our community, and then use that information to develop different scenarios to understand what outcomes we might be looking at into the future as our community continues to grow and change, and developing the draft plan that is one of the attachments in the report today. The second round of engagement, we met with stakeholders, partners, and community members to understand and get their opinions and takes on the draft plan, and have used that feedback to advance a implementation section that wasn't presented publicly previously, which identifies the priority projects and how we've selected those projects to move forward with infrastructure improvements. Our next steps after this meeting today is to take further feedback from committee and make any refinements to the plan and work towards an early 2025 return to a regular meeting for endorsement of the plan. I'll pass it over to Roy now with the next section here.
Great, thanks, Brent. So just before we get into the details, the plan was set out in a very intentional way to kind of provide people, the readers, with a very quick understanding of what we're doing, where we're going, how we get there. The background report is intentionally included as an appendix, which is a lot of the work that gets us to the plan, but people prefer to, understand what's going to change in the district, and that's in the recommendations. So it's intentionally very concise at the start, and then we get more and more detailed on the recommendations as we go through. In terms of where we are, I'm sure most of you are familiar with some of these bullets, but obviously the population is increasing, and we do have a relatively high vehicle mode share. In terms of infrastructure and services, so we heard a lot from people that there's a lack of infrastructure and connected networks for people walking and rolling. People have challenges parking downtown, and then the bus service also doesn't really work for anybody. I think what's perhaps most interesting from that round one of engagement are people's perspectives on transportation, and there really was a high desire for people to get around more sustainably, but they definitely felt it was easier and safer to get around by car than other modes. So in terms of where we're going, so this just kind of sets up a lot of the recommendations, the actions within the plan. So we did look at other municipal plans, provincial and federal plans and strategies to make sure there's alignment with those. So for example, the existing active transportation plan, the truck route plan, provincial and federal road safety strategies and active transportation strategies all kind of help speak to why we have the recommendations in the plan that we do. Growth management is a big topic. Obviously, with that increasing density becomes a lot more people in a more concentrated space. So continuing to travel by car, as a lot of people do today, isn't really going to work in the long term. The roads will become more congested and people will be delayed more. So it's not about asking everybody to get out of their car and ride a bike, but it is about giving people those options. So it's very much about the outcomes that we're trying to outcomes we're trying to create in this community. So a lot of people are do want to see better community health, more affordability, climate-friendly initiatives, and rather not just building more car infrastructure, which kind of goes against the outcomes that we're trying to promote. We go back to there. So hold on a sec. Oh, that's okay. So in terms of how we get there, there's a tagline and a vision. So connecting our community for all in 2040 and beyond, everyone in Squamish has access to safe, sustainable, affordable and reliable transportation options that contribute to our quality of life and the vibrancy of our community. There are goals under that vision, which we're not going to get into today. They're very high level goals, but each of those goals are supported by 4 themes, and under those 4 themes are strategies, and under those strategies are actions, which really gets down into the detail of what we're going to do. So theme 1 really focuses on aligning and updating policies and bylaws that guide transportation, land use and development initiatives. Theme 2 is build and maintain the transportation infrastructure that accommodates everybody. So a good example of that is that's all the bike lanes that are proposed, changes to the built environment that people are perhaps most interested in, what will impact their street or their frontage of their house. Theme 3 is work with partners in neighbouring jurisdictions, so partners like the Ministry of Transportation and BC Transit, who are critical to the transportation system in Squamish. And theme 4 is monitor and learn from our projects and evolving technologies and best practices. So this is a plan for today. I guess transportation realm is evolving rapidly with things like ride hailing, potentially autonomous vehicles and things like that. So it's not set in stone. Priorities will change in the years to come. Technologies will change. So it's about being responsive and receptive to those and adapting as need be. Obviously, I can't get into all the actions in the plan, so we've summarized a few under each of the different modes of transportation here, just to give you kind of a picture of what the kind of things we're proposing. So things like sidewalks and bike lanes on major roads. So it's easy, again, to get along all those major routes by car, but less easy by walking and cycling. Pedestrian-orientated streets. So we've talked about potential changes to Cleveland Avenue and maybe one of the streets in Garibaldi. Safer local streets. So it's not that it's not possible, but it will take a long time to provide sidewalks on every local street in the district. So looking at maybe quick win ways to make those streets safer for people walking and cycling. Developing an AT spot improvement strategy. So finding those little quick fixes that bother people every day on their commutes around the district, and strategizing and funding those little improvements beyond the big projects. Considering innovative techniques such as continuous sidewalks and bike paths. Again, just designing the streets, district streets, in a way that prioritizes the most vulnerable and reflects that kind of mode hierarchy that communities are trying to aspire to. I guess enabling and encouraging shared bikes and scooters, so giving people another way to get around town that they might not have access to today. I'm not sure what's happened with the pictures here, but secure bicycle parking. So there are obviously a lot of people in the town with a lot of expensive bikes that might not want to ride them downtown because there's a chance that it'll be stolen. So providing safe places to park their bike. And then again, the images are a little messed up here, but AT highway improvements. So things like widening the bridges over the highway so you don't have to wait for somebody coming the other direction to cross before you can. In terms of transit, so the biggest one there might be the mobility hubs that are proposed downtown and in Garibaldi. That would allow for transfer between local services and regional services and potentially frequent transit services. Improve local bus stops. So you see things like deck chairs here in this photo. There's often like just a pole and flag in the ditch. So giving people a safe, comfortable place to wait for the bus, ideally weather protected and a safe way to get to it, whether that's sections of sidewalk and crosswalks. But yeah, just making that wait a lot more comfortable than it is today at many locations. In terms of transit delays, so again, this is a case of monitoring as traffic and transportation evolves in the district, but where there are opportunities and where transit is delayed, look for opportunities to provide bus queue jumps, things like that to overcome those impacts. Frequent transit is proposed in the BC Transit Action Plan between the two transit mobility hubs. So generally along Queens and Government, between downtown and Garibaldi. So again, that's a BC Transit initiative, but it can be supported with district infrastructure. And we do plan to prioritize higher quality bus stops along that route. So again, people have a safe place to wait. Of course, support for that BC Transit Action Plan through district infrastructure, which again can include sidewalks, crosswalks, the shelters, making it easy and safe to get to the bus and to wait for it. We've also included improved integration with other services. So that could be, using your BC Transit Pass to unlock bike share, for example, or car share, which there's initiatives in Vancouver at the moment doing similar things. Between like TransLink and Evo, for example. Advocate for regional transit. So again, I think that's an ongoing thing that everybody's aware of. And then consider passenger rail. Again, it's maybe not a district-led initiative, but if those opportunities do arise, certainly don't stand in their way. In terms of road safety, so there are a lot of district streets that are perhaps too easy to drive fast along and don't include infrastructure for all modes. So updating cross sections to reflect best practice, whether that be sidewalks, protected bike lanes, appropriately sized vehicle lanes, intersection geometry, everything that goes into decision making when the district is building projects. Update default speed limits. So I know that's a process already underway. So it's just, again, including that within the plan. Considering no right turn on red at all district signals. So there's only a few district signals at the moment, but as more are added to the network as needed, consider adding that no right turn on red so that cars aren't creeping through crosswalks and aren't conflicting with other movements. Prioritizing people at signals. So that's things like leading pedestrian intervals, making sure all legs of an intersection have crossings, not removing them for traffic capacity reasons. Road safety network screening. So the plan does identify a number of locations that are, you might call safety hotspots with the highest collisions, but there is more work needed to investigate the causes of the collisions at those locations and provide recommendations. So a little further study required there to determine solutions. And network redundancy, so that refers to things like the Pemberton Bridge that would provide a second access out of downtown, but there are other potential road connections in the plan that are up for consideration, perhaps some development led. Enhanced school zones, so there are, as you see here, these kind of center line signage and lower speed limits, but it's looking at other ways, whether it's raised elements, more traffic calming around school zones to improve safety. Then highway safety improvements, again, it's more a case of advocating to the ministry for such improvements, but it's things like, again, safer crossings, lower speed limits through the urban area, and various active transportation related improvements as well. In terms of motor vehicles and goods movement, the actions, so managing the curbside so that there are suitable loading areas for delivery trucks, people aren't parking in bike lanes. Monitoring truck impacts, so that's activity often related to the terminals, but potentially also development and things as well. Supporting land use that uses rail rather than truck for transportation, and getting some of that goods movement off the road network. Implement paid parking, which again is an ongoing initiative, so just formalizing it in the plan here. And exploring off-street parking options for downtown. So again, we've heard that that's a problem. The paid parking might address some of that, but also to explore options for people to park and walk into the downtown core. Making other modes time competitive with cars. So it's looking at the permeability of the different networks, different multimodal networks, and seeing if there's ways to make it, quicker or more comparable to walk or cycle than it is to take the car for a short trip. And develop a transport assessment framework. So that would relate to any new developments that come into the district, be that residential or commercial, industrial, and making sure those developers are doing what the district requires of them to keep the network function as need be. And then monitor motor vehicle delays and mitigation for those delays is an ongoing task. Again, the report does highlight a few locations where we anticipate delays will increase over time and potential alternative solutions. That's kind of some of the key actions from the plan. Just going to go over a couple of slides on public engagement highlights. It's obviously not possible to get into in a lot of detail here, but generally there was good support for the plan. And you see 81% there for the vision and goals, 80% for the active transportation recommendations, 67% for the transit stop upgrades, and 71% support for the vehicle network changes. Just to get into those in a little bit more detail, in terms of the vision and goals, so there was a desire to see specific timelines and some more measurable elements of the goals. So that's something we can think about as we finalize. I guess in terms of active transportation, although 80% said they supported it, a similar amount said that they would also use active transportation a lot more if those recommendations were implemented. So it's nice to see that connection between potential mode shift and the infrastructure. In terms of the transit upgrades, the thought there was that a lot of people right now don't use transit and maybe don't actually want to use transit, so that's why the support was a little lower there. And then for the motor vehicle network changes, again, I think a lot of people have their maybe pet peeves on the different routes they take around the district, so there wasn't necessarily support for one specific improvement. It was kind of scattered around the district. That's kind of how we interpreted that. As well as support for the recommendations in general, we wanted the public to prioritize the recommendations for investment. So that kind of happened in two ways. We had this overall modal priority. So we asked people to select their top two priorities out of the 6 options here, and you can see active transportation scored by far the highest, with road safety closely behind. So that kind of gives you a bit of a mandate to focus investment in those 2 areas. Not to say that the other areas aren't important as well, but that is the public's priority, and that formed part of our implementation plan that Brent will talk about. In terms of active transportation, just a few highlights there. People did prioritized within that, the Queensway corridor, the Government Road corridor, and Cleveland Avenue. And in terms of road safety, there was a bit of focus on the highways, so Alice Lake and the gondola intersections were notable, but also just generally pedestrian and cyclist safety improvements. So I think that's that. I'll pass you back to Brent.
Great, thanks, Roy. So as I was highlighted through the process, this is still a draft and we're still working towards advancing some changes based off what we've heard through the engagement completed with stakeholders, partners in the community through the second round. And some of those high level changes that we're working towards are including some more measurable actions, or I guess measurable performance indicators, key performance indicators that will align with the goals that we've established. There's a variety of different policy modifications, recommendations based off the engagement that we've completed. One of the things that we've heard that hasn't been prioritized or identified is the need to identify street lighting and the ability to improve safety and comfort on our streets through a focus on street lighting. So we'll have a specific action that speaks to that. And then some minor changes to the active transportation network. So there's nothing super significant, but I believe the Valley Cliff Trail was one project that hadn't been identified previously, and so that will be identified in the revised version when it comes back to council in the new year. And then looking for any feedback from committee today. With that, I'll talk a little bit about the prioritization that we've used to develop the implementation section of the plan. So there were 6 different criteria that we used to evaluate nearly 100 different infrastructure projects that were recommended through the plan, and looking to balance the goals of the plan with the ability to deliver the projects, which will provide a high value to the community, and thinking of that community as a broad cross section and not just specific hotspots. So some of the areas that we considered: mode shift potential, critical infrastructure. So speaking back to sort of network redundancy and what can be done to ensure there's safe connections for all. Value, so how we're connecting major destinations and trip generators. Project cost, recognizing that financial viability is also an important consideration. And then equity and public priority were criteria that we use to sort of refine our list and ensure that we are capturing the feedback that we receive directly on projects from the community engagement, and to look at how we're going to deliver projects that are providing options and safe choices for all communities and equity deserving groups. So it brings me to the funding assumptions that were used to continue in that implementation section. So the short, medium, and long-term projects have been identified by using target funding assumptions on the total transportation expenditures until 2040. It has been assumed that including all funding sources, DCC reserves, grant funding, and any other district reserves, including those funded through the Asset Management Reserve Funding Strategy, which will be updated with the implementation section of this plan, that the district will spend $5 million in the first year of the plan and work towards a $10 million expenditure by 2035, and working towards a $12.5 million expenditure by 2040. This funding strategy is trying to take a sort of balanced approach and would lead to approximately $130 million of transportation infrastructure expenditures over the next 15 years. This strategy would allow, or based off the estimates that were created for the plan, a total of 36 priority projects that are in those short, medium, and long-term categories in the implementation section to be initiated over the next 15 years. And it's important to highlight that those 36 projects are not including some smaller scoped projects, some small safety projects that are within the MOTI jurisdiction, so improvements along the highway, but just as a starting point for us to identify where our key projects land. It's also important that of the total of nearly 100 projects that were identified through the plan as nice to have or recommended by 2040, that this 36 projects that are included in the short, medium, and long-term priority buckets are kind of recognizing that financially it's probably not viable to build out the $350 million project list that those nearly 100 projects would entail. So there's lots more that is still, we will continue to work with partners and figure out ways to strategize on getting critical infrastructure built. But this plan is kind of focused on the near term, and then recognizing as well that we are working to update the plan on a kind of 5-year cycle, similar to our other master plans, and that would allow us to kind of recorrect course at each of those 5-year points, where it's maybe not a full plan overhaul, but an opportunity to see how our growth projections that we've used to identify these upgrades are doing, and whether or not we need to change the trajectory as we're moving forward, or if there's different projects that would come in or out of those priorities. So with that, this is just the table of the short-term priorities, and the language that's in the plan is to identify these projects as projects that would we're hoping to initiate in the next 5 years. Many of these projects are already within the 5-year financial plan that has been contemplated by you folks over the previous budget cycle and workshops over the last month. Yeah, and so these are the major projects that have been included in that short-term priority bucket based off the prioritization that we've completed. And with that, I will leave it to questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Council. I have Mayor Herford.
Hello. Thank you for the presentation. The report was fascinating. One of the pieces that I'm hoping I can get some clarity on here is under the new road connections. There's 2 on that list. There's one, the Valley Cliff Finch Drive or thereabouts connection, Loggers East connection, and then the ones from the Highlands. And they're sort of mentioned in the report, and my interpretation of them was that these are things that may happen. I didn't really understand. It wasn't clear to me if they are desired outcomes or likely outcomes we need to plan for. And could you add some clarity there, perhaps?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. The connections that you've identified, connecting Valley Cliff to Loggers East, as well as the Highlands down towards the highway, are in line with what is identified in the OCP. And so our plan has identified those projects as projects that would be supported by the district, but not funded and led by the district. So they're included as connections that would be facilitated through future development if there's a developer or a development that requires that connection, that it's something that we would support, but not something that we'd be dedicating staff resources and district capital investments to facilitate those connections prior to that.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Also, the budgeting piece, as far as those goals for annual investment, is that articulated in sort of deliverables? Or I'm just having a hard time with the construction cost escalation that we've been sort of living through, that actually represents more work happening over that time, rather than just spending more but having a similar level of outcome, if that makes sense.
I can try to interpret, and if I'm missing the point, let me know. So through the chair, we've recognizing the time that we're in and the inflation that we've seen over the last number of years after the pandemic, we felt it was best to present cost estimates in 2024 dollars, recognizing that there is the unknown of what future inflation will do. So we have included that as our starting point. So the costs presented are all in 2024 dollars, and realistically, yeah, inflation will play a role in what can actually be delivered. I think that the goal for the implementation section is to identify kind of where those groups are and which projects land into short, medium, and long-term priorities, and then to get a general sense of, this is the approximate scope of projects that may be contemplated within the horizon of the plan, and then thinking that through additional plan updates that there will be an opportunity to update costing with the more accurate inflation estimates and understand into the future what the investment will be required to continue to build the infrastructure that we need.
Okay, thank you. I'll hold my questions there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettengill?
Yeah, thank you. A couple questions here. One, I had a sense that to achieve the goals we're talking about, we need a significant level of mode shift, greater than what we've talked about in the past. But when I look at the estimates and the magnitude of work, and a lot of it is still car-focused infrastructure, it made me wonder, do we actually need to be aiming for a even greater level of mode shift just for simple affordability when you look at the cost of the infrastructure, or are we sort of too far out to draw that sort of conclusion?
Yeah, thanks for the question, the chair. It's definitely a challenge. I think that many of the infrastructure improvements that are identified in the implementation section of the plan are supporting infrastructure improvements. And so there's a number of active transportation improvements, transit infrastructure improvements, complete street improvements, and really the number of solely automotive focused connections and improvements are actually quite limited. So that just because the category maybe identifies safety or something that is not specific to active transportation or transit, it's still, we feel as though the system works as a complete system with investments that cover and improve each of the discrete components individually. I think the question around what is the best mode share target and how do we come to a target that works for a community, we used an approach where we're not adding lanes to roads within our community. There's a number of critical connections that have been identified previously that continue to be in the plan, the Pemberton Laurelwood Bridge, Third Avenue connection, and those are areas where there's a continuation of the Pioneer Way, kind of the projects that are already have been contemplated previously and are supporting redundancy within our transportation network. And so I think that the question around what is the right mode target and how does that impact really changes where the investment is needed. As noted, there's many of our corridors and streets don't have existing safe infrastructure, and so we're not contemplating adding safe sidewalks and cycling facilities on all of those streets anyways.
Okay, thank you. And then just going to the goals on page 115 of the council package, we talk about, I guess I would consider them quality of life things, noise, safety, wellness, and there's a few things we didn't discuss directly, but they're sort of framed as, I guess, co-benefits. To my mind, those are actually, or could be, or should be goals. And I'm wondering if is there a reason why those sorts of things, again, quality of life, were not considered as goals of this.
Yeah, thank you for the chair. Good question and good consideration. There were a lot of considerations that went into developing these goals and ensuring that we land on the right mix of things that we're working towards, and leaving language, the balance of direct enough that people understand how we can be actioning that, and something that we've heard from the community that they would like a little bit more that is measurable. Some of those quality of life impacts, I agree, could potentially be considered in really many of these goals where the direct quality of life is directly impacted by the transportation choices that are available to individuals. It wasn't the approach that we took to focus on that in the goals as drafted.
Okay, I'm just sort of thinking that a consideration of mine is that might be useful just in terms of as we come across novel circumstances and we're looking to this to sort of decide on new things that come up, having that framing, I think might be an important one. But I'll leave that there for now. And then I have some comments, but I think those are all of my questions for now. So I'll save the comments for when that time comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. And thanks for the comprehensive report. It's really nice to see a plan, a long-term plan that's attempting to cover all of the pieces. I find it very helpful, particularly recently thinking about the Depot Road improvement and the Victoria Street improvements to see what all the things we're saying no to when we say yes to one thing. It's really important for us to have a clear vision on that. I wanted to first ask about the cost estimate, the big number, 350 million. That's a large number. Does that number, or do these estimates feed into our DCC bylaw, and do they form part of the rationale for the DCCs we will be charging in our updated DCC bylaw?
Yeah, through the chair. So these estimates have been provided for the folks that are working on the DCC bylaw update. And the approach is that, we understand that some of these investments are needed to support growth within our community, and some of these investments are needed to continue to support viable and vibrant life for existing community members as well. So I think that the discussion around how is that best captured within the DCC bylaw will be a really important conversation and discussion for council. But the capital investments identified in this plan have been included with the DCC bylaw information that you guys will see in coming weeks.
Yeah, and absolutely understand that it's almost impossible to tear apart something that is required for growth and something that's a benefit to the people who already live here, because those things are hand in hand. So on that note, I was surprised by what looks to me like quite a low estimate, and I am not a bridge builder, of $20 million for the Pemberton Laurelwood Bridge. We have budgeted $5 million for resurfacing the government road bridge over the Mamquam River, and only 20 million for the Pemberton Laurelwood Bridge. So is that budget estimate a recent one, or is that an old one that maybe needs updating?
Through the chair, so the level of estimate for each of these is at a high level, and so these are based off typically, especially something like a bridge where there's fewer comparable examples from the district. It's been, I don't know how long since a bridge was constructed in the district. So this is using information from our consultants as far as an estimate to provide a per meter area squared cost and come up with a high level estimate. As you know, through the budget deliberations, that there's a sub-project for this project to be advanced starting in 2025, and that will the early stages of that will be to develop a design to help us confirm what the cost is and whether that $20 million is appropriate, or if those numbers need to be modified as the financial plan is advanced. So yeah, not a lot of, this is I guess like any of these are really high level estimates, and so based off the information we've received from our consultants, this is the best information that we have.
Great, thanks. And will there be time? Will this updated estimate, this more accurate estimate of the Pemberton Laurelwood Bridge cost, will that come in before the updated DCC bylaw, or will we update our DCC bylaw based on this $20 million number?
Through the chair. So my understanding of the DCC bylaw timeline is the hope will be that there will be a new bylaw adopted in advance of that updated cost information being provided, but there will be an opportunity. I believe the DCC bylaw is updated every 2 years, or that's the intent. And so within a short amount of time after that information is known, that an update could reflect the more updated information as we have it.
Okay, thanks. I hope the gist of my questioning here is I'm really hoping that we are capturing the real costs of our infrastructure upgrades for our DCC bylaws, because that's where we can actually implement, that's how we can actually implement this plan effectively using developer funded. On the developer question, in the budget, there's a new road connection between from Third to Buckley, but that's not on the new road connection map. Is there uncertainty as to whether that should be a road connection, or is the absence of that road connection on the map just some kind of oversight?
Through the chair, it probably some sort of oversight. It's confirming the exact details of what that road connection will look like is something that staff are currently working on. And so, yeah, definitely seems like it's probably something that was missed on the map, but we're continuing to explore what that connection could be.
Okay, great, because there's 5.5 million allocated in the table for that road connection. Is that, so at this point, it's not understood whether that 5.5 million is being offset by developer work in that area, because there's is it Village at Bailey or Bailey Village? I forget the order of words there. Is that development supporting the infrastructure to be putting that road in?
Through the chair, my understanding is that development is providing us with a road right-of-way, a road dedication that and constructing a multi-use path, assuming that development advances at the rate at which they're hoping to advance. So I don't believe they are, or at least hasn't been negotiated that they would be contributing beyond that. It's more the planning stage where confirming and understanding what that future connection could be that is being confirmed. So the cost would still be borne by the district to implement that road connection when and if it occurs.
Okay, thanks. On to other rail crossings. I don't see any plan or conversation about the Bailey Street rail crossing, the one that out by the estuary that was shut. Is there any consideration of upgrading that to a level crossing, or is that not part of the plan at all?
Through the chair, it hasn't been contemplated as a project for the 2040 horizon. There's property considerations and with CN that need to be confirmed to determine whether or not that is a viable option in the future. But it just because it's not included within the current 2040 project list. Doesn't mean it's an exhaustive list of any project that could happen at some point in the future. And so it has, there's some understanding that it may be, maybe something that's worth us considering as we advance beyond the project list, but it doesn't live in the current 2040 project list.
So I absolutely understand there could be property considerations. That's very close to the railway, and I know this CN is they take their right of way very seriously because they want to get their trains. They want to keep their trains moving, and rightfully so. I would like to see a consideration of that. That is what that was formerly a mode of in and out of town that folks used, in and out of downtown, and the closure of that seemed to be a surprise to many. It's not a commonly used mode of transport, but I would like to see, if possible, some discussion of it, even if it's a clear justification of to what the challenges are and what the barriers are to removing those barriers.
I can respond. Just another consideration is when we were modeling the future scenarios, we looked at a scenario with a connection and without that connection. And through that modeling work, it didn't show it as a critical connection from a transportation capacity perspective, recognizing that there is other value beyond capacity and network redundancy. And the existing agreement as far as the district has with CN is for emergency use only. And so, but that's something that we can consider.
All right, thanks. And I think my final question, nope, my second to last question, is about the truck routes. I noticed there's a truck route that runs along Mamquam Road, a proposed truck route running along Mamquam Road that ends what appears to be where Paco Road is. Is that intended to be a truck route servicing the Diamond Head, the Garibaldi Park road, the logging that occurs up there?
Through the chair, it's providing a connection to an industrial zoned area within the district, which is that hub kind of by Paco Road, as you've identified. And then I think pending the outcomes with the Mamquam Ring Road and that section that connects up beyond the district could be a consideration, sort of identifying the preferred route, and the language within our traffic bylaw sort of notes that industrial users have the ability to use any connection to access their site. And if there's a truck route, they have to use the truck route. And so this is kind of a tool without an active road on Mamquam Ring Road, identifying that spur as somewhere where we would hope future industrial users would travel. If that answers your question.
It does, but I'm concerned about the answer. It seems like we are okay with leaving the boulevard as an acceptable truck route for logging and gravel moving. That's acceptable to the district?
So speaking to the Mamquam Ring Road through the chair, speaking to the Mamquam Ring Road and the lack of clear direction on whether or not it's an existing, I guess, like safe connection from a life safety perspective. Our thinking with the truck route map was to identify a connection that, as future direction with the ring road is confirmed, that connection to the Highlands and beyond would be identified pending the information that's ongoing from the Mamquam Ring Road, can be considered as staff can take that back if there's direction from council to identify the Mamquam Ring Road as the preferred alignment. But at this time, it's shown just going to kind of the terminus of Mamquam Road on that section.
Okay, I would personally, I don't know how the rest of council feels, would really like to see a plan for truck traffic coming down from the Garibaldi Park Road area. Currently, trucks come downhill into and through a school zone, make a left at a roundabout that was clearly not designed for large trucks to be turning left on. So I recognize that there's a challenge with the Mamquam for the Mamquam Ring Road, but I think the challenges of having trucks coming down the boulevard are also significant. I think that there are significant life safety questions for both roads. Yeah.
Go ahead. Through the chair, I just wanted to add, in addition to Mr. McMurtry's response, that there will be a forthcoming report to council on November 26th with regards to the Mamquam Ring Road. So this will be discussed further in 2 weeks' time.
And is that report informing this study, or will that report inform a future update to this proposed truck route?
Through the chair, I think pending the results of the discussion on November 26th, we can discuss with the Transportation Master Plan as to how best to incorporate council feedback from that session into the final plan.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, I'm guessing this has to do with Modi. One of I really like the quick wins, the easy, simple solution. And one of them, and it's perhaps because I live in the area, but as you come westbound on Mamquam Road, making the left-hand turn southbound onto 99, it seems quite obvious that you could put 2 left-hand lanes instead of the one. The one left-hand lane there seems to back up Mamquam Road. Is there a reason we can't simply just make 2 left-hand turns off Mamquam Road, turning southbound on 99?
Through the chair, so that intersection has been identified in the implementation section as an improvement, and the Ministry of Transportation, as you noted, that's within their jurisdiction and their road right of way. And so we're working with the Ministry of Transportation to advance improvements that will improve operations as well as safety at that intersection.
Great, thanks.
Thanks. I have Councillor French and then Herford.
Thank you, Chair. So there is a truck route map, and I believe it shows up twice, pages 64 and 219 of 271. Or page 56 of the master plan document and page 20 of the What We Heard report. It shows, so just to carry on a thought that we have already started into with Councillor Hamilton, shows existing truck routes and the 3 proposed new additional truck route sections. So the existing routes include the emergency access road between downtown and the rail yards as part of our truck route options. And that's despite the fact that the road section is gated and has been for some time. And no indication that those gates are going to be moved anytime soon. So is this section best updated at this point to indicate that it's emergency use only and really, for all intents and purposes, isn't currently a viable truck route?
Through the chair, thanks for the question. Yeah, definitely something that we can update. This map was developed off of the existing truck route as found in the traffic bylaw. And so it's a bit of a housekeeping task for us as well to note that our traffic bylaw needs an update with a map that is in line with what the existing operations are. And so it definitely is something that we'll update moving forward.
Okay, that's great. And in formulating this question, I created my own graphic that indicates, did you get that? Okay, perfect. And then pages 107 and 108 of 271. How feasible is it to update the data on these pages from the 2021 census information with more recent statistics?
I don't have those pages directly in front of me. Depending on what the data is, the 2021 census is the only place where we have commute to work information. So more recently, the 2023 Statistics Canada population estimate provides a snapshot in time of what the existing population in the district is. But anything beyond high level population estimates is only reported out on a 5-year basis. So we can review that and ensure that we're using the right data.
Okay, great. I noticed a few typographical grammar issues. Like for instance, there's a text box that has got what I think is just one word missing out of it on page 56 of 271. It looks like it's just the word implement maybe got knocked out during final edits. And then on page 85 of 271, action 3.32, the title reads like an incomplete thought. It says reduce rail crossing barriers and improve crossing safety along. Maybe the same situation as the previous one I identified there. Page 105 of 271, A4 community profile. Squamish is a community of around 24,000 residents. So this goes back to my previous question about updating to more recent census information, because I think we're all well aware that we're just shy officially of 30,000 population, so up 6,000 from this number. And then page 106 of 271, there's no alpine skiing in the Garibaldi Highlands, University Highlands area. And I think I get what was happening here. It was trying to express that you go through the Garibaldi Highlands to potentially get to alpine skiing up in Garibaldi Park. I think it'd probably be best if I just emailed these notes to you so that you've got them right there handy and you could review them and see what can be done, if anything, to tidy them up.
Through the chair, yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, and then I have one more question, Chair. Yeah. Pages 113, 117, 119, and 123 of the 271-page document. These are all maps, and they don't have legends. So I'm just wondering if staff would agree that for readability, a legend is maybe a good idea to identify what the colored lines mean, what the dotted lines mean, what the symbols represent on those maps.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, it's definitely a comment and we'll update that for final revision.
Okay, great. And so when I send that email with those typogrammar things, I'll include those page numbers so it's easy for you to see which ones I'm talking about. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. I have Mayor Herford up next, followed by Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. My question is around engagement with Squamish Nation.
Oh yeah, sorry, we cannot understand you at all. You sound like a Muppet.
Hold on.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Councillor Anderson, and then we'll come back to you, Mayor Herford.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Okay, sorry for that. I'm juggling here. My question is around engagement with Squamish Nation. I just when I was thinking about just transportation improvements or requirements between whether that's between reserve lands or freehold lands or commercial interests and so on. Just how are those reflected here beyond those will be addressed through the MOU process?
Thanks for the question through the chair. Yeah, so we have been engaging with Squamish Nation peoples throughout this process, including an engagement fair that was hosted, where we were hosted, district staff were hosted at Totem Hall. We've also been engaging with staff and have used the Squamish Connect portal to get direction upon their the priorities, transportation priorities that ensure there's safe and viable connections between the nation and the district. So there's a strategy that speaks kind of at a higher level towards working with the Squamish Nation to advance transportation connections between their nation and our community. And we have continued to engage with staff to understand and learn where the greatest priorities land. So it's kind of mostly captured within the strategy that speaks specifically to working with the nation as a important partner through this.
Okay, thank you for that. And I'm going to need to drop off the call now, so I trust my council colleagues to handle the rest of this, and I will look forward to seeing it at readings. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anderson.
Very good. I'll start off with referring to the A3 policy overview section. It's pages 98 and 99 of the report. And there's a number of policies referenced there. And my question is whether there may be some additions to that list that may be useful. There are, and this might be something we might address in the next OCP update, is that there are a substantial number of transportation-related policies elsewhere outside the transportation chapter. A number of them are located in the industrial land use chapter, and there's a subsection there entitled 14.5 Port Facilities and Marine Facilities. And there are also transportation recommendations or policies in the OCP in the downtown Squamish and in the environment section. I guess I'm throwing out a note there. We might consolidate those in future so that they can be easily found by anybody. But my question is whether that section should be referred to in the current document in addition to Chapter 20, Transportation. There's also the Marine Action Strategy, which has substantial focus on transportation issues. And I'm wondering whether the Sea to Sky Multimodal Evacuation Plan deserves reference. It considers, for example, marine transport, and in addition to highways issues. And in the marine transport section of that plan, I note that it should be updated regarding marine facilities at Squamish. It only mentions Squamish terminals, and Squamish terminals has never and will never be used for moving people and barges. It's not set up for that. Elsewhere, we have those facilities. So those are three examples of policy documents. Should they be included in the present Transportation Master Plan? References that?
Thanks through the chair. Yeah, I think that the challenge, as you know, there's a lot of policies and a lot of documents and a lot of areas for us to look and for staff to direct the folks that we're working with to review and consider and understand. And so appreciate you highlighting those areas, and we can consider if those sections should be referenced as we work towards a final version.
Still on the topic of marine, I had another question. Sections 2, it's strategies 2 and 3. I'll just indicate them specifically here. You've got action 2.72, support ferry services. I wonder whether, excuse me, I'm needing to, it's 2.71, support multimodal access to float plane services. And then we've got 2.72, support future ferry services, but we're missing barge or short sea freight transport. Also elsewhere, in the next strategy section, 3.3.4, support industrial land uses that utilize rail, but we're missing support land uses or support the use of marine transport. And that is a policy that comes up already in the OCP, the rationale for supporting that. I guess I'm just highlighting whether we're missing marine in those two sections, marine facilities, supporting supporting them in their use.
Thanks. Thanks for the question through the chair. Yeah, the plan at a high level and kind of see it at the beginning starts with a focus on ensuring that we're supporting marine, ground, air transport and understanding the connections and the links between those. I think that we can, as staff, look to broaden the language to some of the specific actions that you spoke to ensure that we're capturing that intent that was outlined in the goals at the beginning.
Thank you. A section of the report I found interesting, and it's already been referred to by colleagues, are these intersections. These are intersections we need to be working on with MOTI, and I found that the description of that enterprise is well laid out in the plan. But in the language concerning the Highway 99 Mamquam Forest Service Road intersection, it comes up twice in the report, and I'm just want to clarify or have confirmed. Because that description is confusing if from the point of view of the west side of that intersection, the Site B side has different issues and different solutions. And are we considering that whole intersection, both the east and west sides? These references twice in the report, I'm not clear that we are. And I'll highlight why. When we discussed the Mamquam Falls Squamish Canyon project and its relationship to that intersection, some of the proposals made to fix the solution on the Mamquam Forest Service Road side would not be in the interest of fixing the west side of the intersection. It has to be an integrated solution. So I'm just wondering whether it's falling through the cracks or whether we might consider a different description of that intersection so that we can be sure that we're looking at an integrated whole.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, definitely can consider broadening the description of the intersection. I think we're building off a study completed by MOTI that had identified that intersection and challenges that are at it. A challenge with any of these intersection labels is, when there's multiple roads, things get missed and you use your brain to fill in the blanks, but definitely important to make that clear. So thank you for that question.
Thank you, Mr. McMurty. And of course, one of our handicaps is that road has no name. It's called Industrial Access Road, and it has some tenure issues, and maybe that's something that we can look at in the future as well. My next question concerns transit exchanges, which are addressed in action item 3.2.2, support transfers between local, frequent, and regional transit through exchanges, facilities, as well as programs. But what I'm wondering is whether we should be considering private transit services in this effort. We have 3, Squamish Connector, Shred shuttle buses, and Skylinks. They're using, for example, the Adventure Center, but we have no local transit connection to the Adventure Center that works for those bus companies, and they themselves have brought that up on a number of occasions. Can we have a declare in policy that we're open to collaborating with those transit services and planning those exchanges?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. We definitely were working with BC Transit and have identified the need to support private operators where possible, especially within our downtown and the constrained environment that it is. And so we can broaden the language in the plan to ensure that we are clear with that. But as staff have been working with BC Transit, we have identified that desire to support those options if viable.
Thank you, Mr. McMurty. I have 2 final questions, Chair. Queensway has 2 intersections at Commercial Way and Industrial Way, and they've both been identified as risk areas and areas that have had an accident record. I have some friends in an office building at the corner of Commercial and Queensway, and they see it through their window daily and often provide testimonials to the risks at that intersection. My question is, are those 2 intersections, how are they prioritized as regards addressing safety issues? In the report, the Industrial Way intersection is given highest priority, whereas the Commercial Way intersection is given medium priority. Is that a fixed thing, or can we? I wonder if you might be able to elaborate on that ranking.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. So we've used just crash data from ICBC to identify the highest most frequent collision intersections within our community. The other prioritization tool when we were looking at all of the projects to try to understand where projects might land, we used the criteria that were presented earlier. And so we have two different ways that we have currently looked at this. One thing to add on to this is part of the actions that are identified in the plan is to develop a safety screening, I'm going to get the words wrong, but a safety screening of our community to help us confirm where the best value and highest priority locations are. And so through that work, we would also confirm what locations we should be investing in first.
Thank you. That's helpful. My last question concerns the one-lane bridge on 3rd Avenue, which we're already out into Squamish Terminals access. Nobody else is using that at this time. And it was installed, I believe, when some floodgate works were done about 20 years ago. And Squamish Terminals were disappointed with the outcome of a one-lane bridge, and it has cost them business. And this has come up in a DCC bylaw project list in the past. I'm not sure of its status there now. And I do note that another related project, if you're going to build a bridge across the Cattermole Slough from the Oceanfront Peninsula to 3rd Avenue, then you're going to need a 2-lane bridge there. The Cattermole Creek Bridge is listed in the plan, but not addressing the 1-lane bridge. I wonder if you might be able to elaborate on that.
Thank you, through the chair. So the 1-lane bridge on 3rd Avenue had been in the DCC bylaw until the 2022 update, and it was removed following the oceanfront area plan advancing to confirm an alignment for a connection from Westminster over the Cattermole and connecting to 3rd Avenue. So that'll be further north of where that 1-lane bridge is. And so the desire to, or the rationale to include that in the DCC at that point didn't exist anymore because it wasn't supporting development within our community, growth within our community. And it hasn't been included in the transportation plan, but it is still something that if there are opportunities, and I know that we pursued a grant unsuccessfully within the last few years that looked to improve commerce and shipping connections within our community. So it's still something that's on our radar, and as opportunities arise, it's something that could be pursued, but isn't something that from a broader community value perspective, we felt should be within the project lists that are included in the plan.
Thank you. That's helpful. And as a footnote, of course, Dave Merrow has worked on the National Trade Corridors Fund application, which did include that item. Finally, just another footnote on this. The Cattermole concept of a Cattermole Creek Bridge is very old. It goes back to the first phase of planning of the oceanfront. And I personally think it should be revisited. And I think that if you were to bring it forward to the public today, you'd have substantial opposition from folks concerned about the estuary, opposition to such a bridge, because it will really open up the floodgates of walkers and dogs into the wildlife management area. And I can assure you that will be of great concern to anyone interested in the conservation area of the estuary. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks. We're a little over time, so I'm just going to ask one quick question, and I do have some comments. I was just wondering, going back to the future support for ferry services, I was just wondering if staff could comment on the viability of a pedestrian ferry with the presence of LNG tankers in Oquepsum Howe Sound. I know that there's no provincial or federal legislation around it, but I believe it is an international recommendation to minimize the interface of tankers and public transit.
Through the chair, I don't have any knowledge of any of those requirements, and it would be a private entity that would be exploring passenger ferry service. And so I think the transportation plan speaks to supporting on district land where and what those connections could be, but understanding what the broader legal constraints of how they would operate is kind of outside of the scope of our work.
Thanks. And then Councillor Hamilton's question had me thinking about the, oh, never mind, actually. That's fine. That was covered. I'm looking for somebody. Sorry, Council Pettengill, do you have another question? You got to make it quick.
I had some comments. Is now an opportunity for the comments?
Okay, hold on. Councillor Hamilton, I think, has one more question, and then I think we'll make a motion and then we'll have comments. Does that make sense? You want to comment right now?
Well, I just, if there's any disagreement, I guess others may want to respond. If we do that after the call to question, I guess that's fine.
Okay, I'll have Councillor Hamilton go first and then we'll do comments.
Thanks. A quick question about the short-term priorities list. We've got the Victoria Street Bridge and the Depot Road active transportation improvements. And the next one on that list is the Government Road active transportation bridge widening at Mamquam River. What was the this is the first time I've heard of bridge widening. Maybe I hadn't looked at the previous plans in enough detail, but it seems strange to me to prioritize the widening of that bridge before the implementation of the active transportation along Government Road to the bridge. So can you speak to the rationale for prioritizing that so high, and whether 2.5 million is a reasonable estimate or perhaps maybe low?
Through the chair, yeah, so this came out through the prioritization tool that we used, and part of it is recognizing that there's not sufficient active transportation facilities on the existing bridge, whereas on the north side and the south side there are existing bike lanes. They're not perfect, but there's something. And the cost estimate is based off through the existing resurfacing project. We've asked the consultants that we're working with to explore different scenarios to improve the active transportation connection, and they've developed a cost estimate based off that work to widen and to cantilever that. And so part of this is there value in getting something advanced well that other work is proceeding, and if this is something that could make sense at that point. Yeah, leave it there.
Okay, thanks. I think I'll follow up with that at budget time because great. Thank you. Now I understand why the priority is there. Thanks.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Pettengill for comments.
Yeah, thank you. Just find my notes here. Yeah, just I guess reiterate. I think it might be worth having a goal sort of around quality of life in the goals section. Is just my thought, because I do think, again, as we're deciding upon new projects or changes that come, that's an important framing, sort of almost beyond it's a co-benefit, but it's also something I think we want to be striving for with all of this work. And I think we have, but I think making that explicit is could be useful. The zoning bylaw, page 123, I didn't see any mention to end of trip facilities and highlighting the importance of that. I know we tend to do that, but and it's touched on in a couple places in the plan, but it struck me as something to be highlighted possibly. With the traffic bylaw and some of the changes, while I support the changes, things like an Idaho stop and so on, I do wonder about the education budget that's required to support that. And so that's one hesitation I have there, especially if we're doing things that aren't sort of normal in other municipalities. Are we taking enough steps or planning for enough to make sure that those are actually safe? Because every driver understands that's how the rules are here. So just I wonder, maybe it doesn't belong in this plan, but it's something that jumped out at me as sort of concern around these sorts of changes for Idaho stops and so on. The rail section jumped out at me for a couple reasons, and I'm glad to hear the amount of work that's happening with Squamish Nation. But just recognizing that railways tend to be very challenging for First Nations, and so wanting to be doubly sure we're touching base with Squamish Nation on that piece. And also we found that rail operations and properties can be challenging. We have very little authority And so just want to be cautious how we move forward on anything rail-based, given how little authority we seem to have, and we may end up with something that constrains us in ways we don't want. So just highlighting that. It'd be good to be very clear, because there's a number of MOTI projects which would be, pardon me, their funding and their timelines and so on. So I think it's important for us to make sure the public understands which of the projects in this plan are really going to be driven by the province and the province's budgets and timelines, just so we can set expectations. And then my final thing is, I'm just a little bit hesitant still on some of the extra lanes on and off the highway. I understand there's some public demand for them, but they also seem at odds with a lot of the mode shift goals we have and the desire of some people to moderate growth a little bit. I think putting in extra lanes on and off the highway go against a lot of the goals we have, from what I understand the outcomes of that sort of thing often is. So just making sure at the very least, if there's a bit of context wrapped around that so people understand some of the trade-offs. And so a few small things, but I really appreciate the report. I think it takes us in a really good direction, and was really pleased to read through it. So thank you very much.
Thanks. I'll have Councillor French next.
Thank you, Chair. So the traffic management plan as it exists at this point, I think, is excellent. And I want to state that up front. I think we're at a very good place with it, where it's at now. And I do have some thoughts for improvements to the plan, and stress that my thoughts are designed to make an already great report maybe just a little bit better, or at least through my eyes, a little better. So I'd like to see action 1.4.5 prioritized due to the amount of construction plan for the near future. This action item calls for suitable and accessible active transportation connections for people trying to get around construction sites specifically. I fully agree that priority should be given to maintaining existing functions over traffic capacity. So the city of Vancouver is just a great example of having demand that construction companies make sure that pedestrians and cyclists are taken care of in construction zones. And they've been doing this for decades. So it can be done, and we can do better in Squamish. And a point that I want to flag is the fact that 11 Highway 99 intersections out of 12 highway intersections inside the district boundaries have been identified as problematic. And many of the problems have existed for a long time. So this plan is yet another reminder of how the province has failed our community, and a reminder that council needs to continue lobbying the provincial government to make intersection adjustments up and down our community, north to south. I feel that the maps without legends should have legends, as I noted during the question portion of the conversation. And again, as I noted in the questions, if it can be done quickly and easily, I'd like to see the census data updated so that we're referring to the most recent census statistics where it's possible. I do recognize that in some places we probably do have to stick with the 2021 stats because that's the best that we have, but I know for sure there are places where 2024 updates are possible. And just a quick final thought on Councillor Hamilton focusing in on the Malcolm Ring Road. I'm totally with him on all of that. The boulevard is just not an acceptable truck route. Students at elementary school, strollers, families, dogs, it's all there on that street, and wherever possible, we should be sending that commercial traffic over to the ring road. So I look forward to that discussion in 2 weeks as we drill down a little further on that situation.
Thanks. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Before I forget a particular item, there's a reference today to enhanced school zones. I think we might consider also a hospital zone. And my experiences as a former elementary school traffic manager at the Squamish Elementary School, there are virtually no walking pedestrians to that school today. It's a drive-by school. Unfortunately, I regret it. But it is within a hospital zone. And then that is a case where the hospital zone is what might be emphasized for traffic safety and speed control and that sort of thing at least at that location. There may be other places where there's seniors or facilities where we may consider that another category of zone, but certainly a hospital zone at that location. As for the report overall, I think relative to the 2010-2011 multimodal transportation plan, we have a clearer presentation, less cluttered with data. The strategies and action recommendations are very clearly presented. That will be a durable aspect of the report, I believe. I was a part of the working group for the last round, and I found that working group experience was very valuable and beneficial for the process last time. It helped to bring people out into, for example, public engagement sessions. There was about 20 people in that working group from different sectors. And one sector that was missed last time was commercial transportation, and we should be careful not to miss it this time around. And I'm thinking about businesses, trucking firms. They're easy to identify. There's clusters of them, and including Squamish Nation businesses. Let's make an effort to ensure that we're connecting with that segment. The excuse me. The action item 2.5.3 refers to monitoring truck routes and their impacts. I think that there's another angle to that. Maybe we need to be protecting truck routes also. I'll give you an example. When Capilano University purchased a piece of property for a future campus on 3rd Avenue, Squamish Terminals immediately asked, why are you putting a college campus on our truck route? So I think we need to look at it from both sides in a proactive manner. The Valleycliff Finch connector road that's been addressed by Mayor Herford and perhaps another couple of my colleagues, I think perhaps it deserves to be made clear in the report what our intentions and what are the circumstances and considerations we're making. The public will certainly be interested. This is also true for the emergency access road. The neighborhood of Dentville will certainly be interested in that item because they're interested in traffic control, and opening up that road would be such a mechanism. But the Valleycliff to Finch will certainly need a better description, at least for the public, as to our intentions and considerations. I find that something that is inconsistent throughout the report is our handling of Squamish as a commuter town. There is differing interpretations, and they're even on one page after another, differing accounts of that. And I think that we need to, it's so important to the whole picture. We need to recognize that we are a community with a jobs to housing ratio imbalance relative to the city of Vancouver, relative to Revelstoke and a number of other communities, Whistler, that have been mentioned. Jobs to housing ratio balance is a tool used in smart growth planning all around North America, and I think it's a concept we should embrace and use it as a metric. It means that we need, or it's a way to understand why people use cars in the first place. And we're not asking that question in this report, and we're not looking to build that data and that picture. If we're going to update parking requirements and remove parking minimums, well, why are people using cars in the first place? Let's understand that better. We've got references to, excuse me, the strategy 2.6, reduce reliance on the automobile. Well, why are people using it? Maybe it's because there's no jobs in Squamish. We heard a lot of testimonial from commuters when the Sea to Sky community, Sea and Sky residents came before us a couple of months ago. Horizon year considerations. This refers to City of Vancouver. We're inspired by the City of Vancouver in considering that horizon year, and in 15 years, make vehicle capacity, give it a lesser role. Well, again, why do people use cars? Let's understand this. We are not Whistler, Nelson, Revelstoke, or the City of Vancouver. We're different. The OCP, as is cited, supports the growth of local appointment to reduce commuting. Elsewhere in this report, we have acknowledging that we are a commuting town. This is a substantial phenomenon here, and we have the survey respondents, 20% of the survey respondents commute to Whistler or Lower Mainland. So I think that that picture, that context, I think needs some better emphasis because it is so important as to whether we're going to succeed or fail. I have some comments on parking in the report.
Councillor.
Chair, I think that as parking will be coming up in the weeks ahead, I'll leave it for that occasion. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I have a few comments. Or you want to go first? Okay. Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much for the comprehensive report. It's extraordinarily valuable for us to have these reports with the long-term vision. And as you said, there's a lot of things that are going to change between now and then, but it's still important to see the full picture as we make the small steps moving forward. I was trying to find the exact quote in the document, but at some point it said a vision statement is great, a clear vision is good, but the real test comes in the budget. What's hitting the budget? And right now I only see three of the items listed here, and maybe I'm missing one. It's the Victoria Street, the Depot Road, and the Pemberton Laurelwood Bridge. Three of these projects in our financial plan. I think we need to this is great, very supportive, but we need as a council to think very carefully and clearly about how we actually support this plan through the budget. And I think that's where it really gets difficult, because then we make decisions against other priorities in the community. And regarding I think what's important to me in this overall plan is that our vision in moving throughout our community should be a shared experience between pedestrians, transit, wheels, like cyclists, and motor vehicles. And people should be free to choose which mode they want in a safe and get to their destination in a safe way. And I do believe we need to shift our priority a little bit away from vehicular traffic. I myself am a commuter. I commute to Vancouver 3 days a week. But I think we need to shift and I will not be able to do that on a bus anytime soon. But I think within our community, we do need to shift towards thinking about how people can get around more safely. And I think that this plan does that. So thanks very much.
Thanks. Okay, so thank you so much for all the hard work you've done in bringing this master plan to this level. Transportation is an integral part of how a community functions, so it gives me a lot of comfort to see how much consideration staff is giving this. I heard Councillor French say recently that everything is a budget conversation, and I think about that a lot when it comes to active transportation and how we can roll out more active transportation encouragement and bus ridership with minimal investment. Some comments about the report. I think for bike parking as a cyclist, it's not just the secure parking that we need more of or some of. We also need just a higher volume of bike racks in general downtown. In Europe and Asia, we talk about this a fair amount. The bike parking lots are more akin to our car parking lots, and that's the kind of volume that we're talking about with some of these initiatives. So I feel like it would be in our best interest to really explore that. I'm going to mention this again. This is a low-hanging fruit, low-cost initiative to reduce congestion downtown and in Garibaldi Village. We have several established communities in Squamish, including much of Valleycliff and Garibaldi Highlands, who need to go downtown or to Garibaldi Village, respectively, to get their mail. So just advocating to Canada Post to have the communal mailboxes in those neighborhoods. I am opposed to removing the minimum parking requirements. I think this is, ironically, a short-sighted approach that's rooted in not creatively envisioning the potential repurposing of parking spots for other uses. I lived in a 700 square foot apartment for 10 years, and I had a storage unit, and I would imagine it'd be difficult to live with that space without having storage outside of your apartment, which is what most of these designs are, if not all of them that are coming through right now. So this would at least give them an option to retrofit that parking spot for potentially storage later on down the line when they have transitioned away from cars. I like the stop as a yield for cyclists incorporation. Realistically, I think what that's doing is bringing our regulations in line with actual practices. I will plug again the prioritization of trail clearing for encouraging active transportation. I walked through a few deep puddles on my way here today. 'Tis the season. Another low-cost initiative, emphasis for education for active transportation commuters, like teaching cyclists how to behave on roads and pathways to keep everyone safe. Drivers are regularly confused when, as a cyclist, I obey traffic regulations. I think that's a little bit problematic. So it just keeps everything predictable and flowing. And I also want all cyclists to know about the importance of bells and helmets and how to use them on these multi-use pathways. And for the love of God, how to use roundabouts for everyone, how to use roundabouts. That's a little bit of a side note, but still important. I appreciate the frontage and sidewalk bylaw update. I think that will help our more densely populated areas have better flow for active transportation. I also, I appreciate the pedestrian oriented streets as well. This is a bit of a nitpicky piece here and a tiny project to complete, but mirrors under the bridge for 99 at the Mamquam Blind Channel. I know they've been there before and they tend to get vandalized, but those are pretty dangerous corners. I was biking with my 8-year-old a couple weeks ago and I told her to ding her bell, as one should, to let somebody know that she's coming around this like 90-degree corner. And sure enough, somebody came whipping around and it was nearly a head-on collision, and it could have been prevented by a mirror. Also, for other safety reasons, in particular for women, we're not super fond of blind under bridges, just to keep it usable. And again, this is a little bit of a side note, but it's just timely. The modifications, if staff could keep an eye on the modifications that are currently happening on the Clark and Brenner for the Red Bridge, because they've significantly narrowed that intersection. And I think it's going to be problematic for our active transportation network. I'm not sure, you know, you guys are probably in communication with these people, but maybe just before it's too late, it might be worth taking a look at. Okay, I think that's it for comments. Anybody, any more comments? Are we ready for a motion? Councillor Anderson?
I move to receive the staff report on the Transportation Master Plan.
Yeah, we do have a staff recommendation, and there are two pieces for it. Receiving the draft Transportation Master Plan for information, and the second is direct staff to prepare a final Transportation Master Plan based on the feedback received at the November 12th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting, and bring the final plan back for council endorsement. Would you like to move that motion?
I so move.
Okay, is it seconded? Are there amendments? Do you need more clarity?
I've taken notes. I feel like clarity is always great, but it's also hard to come to clarity with a group and being over schedule. Yeah, so happy to take clarity if you provide it, but also happy to take the information that's been shared.
It's always an exercise of herding butterflies is what I've heard it called. Okay, seconded by Councillor French. All in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Motion to
terminate.
There we go. Seconded by Councillor French. All in favor? All right. Bye.
Thank you.